What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with the one, the only, the legendary, the certified fantabulous, Mr. Grant Hughes. Our mega super duper 2025 NBA playoffs preview is officially here. A little bit later than we normally would have done it, but it is here. And we're going to talk about every prospective series, offer predictions. I'll actually let Grant take you through how we're going to approach it this year. We kind of changed the setup each year to keep it fresh and also to maybe give us better organization. But before the playoffs officially tip off, Grant, how are you feeling about this postseason? Are you ready?
I'm so ready. I feel like every year I spend more and more time like winking at or like nodding to this idea that like the regular season is just like this other thing and that the playoffs inform my opinion to like, I don't know, like what percent, whether it's talking about a team or a player or anything. It's like how they do in the playoffs accounts for like 80% of what you know what I mean? Like it just, I have gotten taken up with this idea of like the playoffs are really what matters, and especially the deeper rounds, because that's where you really learn like, okay, how good is this player, or what are these flaws, or what are these strengths, and so I just like, I don't know, everything's heightened, everything matters more, and the playoffs are just like the best part of the season, obviously, but like the way the regular season has changed for me over the last several years and the way I think about it, it just only augments like how much more I care about and I'm excited by the playoffs.
I'm just really excited to see how the Lakers faring in the playoffs impacts Kevin Durant's legacy. As a member of the Bucks. I think that's
I
what I'm.
just want to know what Stephen A. Smith is going to say about Bronny. If he's on the bench, is he not? Like, how many minutes is he going to get? Does he?
Is LeBron wearing a shirt during warmups for the first time in 21 years? Because
right.
I will say, so I love that like first weekend of the playoffs. It's kind of like when the start of the regular season is there, and it's a little bit of that like first. I think it's like the Wednesday or where there's 14 or games. It's like, and it's been months since you had to deal with that, so you get a little overwhelmed. So I get that hit of adrenaline a little bit in a good way. But in the first round specifically, there's always hopefully like one or two series that end up being epic. And in the West, like I think we have the potential for a bunch of those. But there's always, I feel like more than half of the series where it's you see the first game and you're like, let's just get this thing over with. We know.
Oh yeah, right. I want to be clear. I love the playoffs, but the first round is really overwhelming because it's just like the time you have to invest if you're going to try to watch all the games. Which, sorry to ruin the bit, but like we actually do. Like I really try to watch every single game.
Don't have Steph Castle Rookie of the Year truthers that.
Yeah, well, we said he has the highest ceiling. We clearly watched him. But like with that said, I want a couple sweeps just to like clean the plate a little bit. Right. Because so like we can really focus on the ones that I think, and there might be a few that go 6 or 7.
So do you want to explain how we're going to approach each series before we belly flop into it?
Yeah. So what we're going to try to do is, do the best we can to hit like the series and the sort of relevant players, relevant angles from sort of as close to like a 360 degree, like, something for everybody perspective. So for each series, and this won't be, I didn't confine it to one team or the other. We're going to discuss what we think is the most interesting sort of tactical wrinkle of the series, the matchups, the strategy one team or the other might employ, like that kind of thing, the nuts and bolts of it. Then the narrative, like what's the story that we're most excited by for this series? Like what angles might emerge? What are we going to be talking about that's separate from the tactics and whatever? And then we just have, it's a bit of a catch-all. It's going to overlap with either the tactics or the narrative side of it, but an X factor. And that can be, in most cases, it's a player, but it can also be like pretty tied to the tactics. Like, how's this guy going to impact the series? And I shied away. We didn't set the rule for this, but shied away from picking like the best player in the series. It's like, well, how's Jokic going to, like, okay, so the X factor sort of has the implication that it's someone that may or may not be a swing piece, but sort of needs to be. You know what I mean? There's some variability priced in. So that's how we're going to try to tackle each series.
My only differentiator was I only picked superstars for the X factor.
Right. I will catch myself more than once, because I always do this, making the argument that like Team X will just win the series because they have the best player in it. Like, which is just like the heuristic that's often right, but like I'm going to
Well, I
try to
think
avoid.
honestly, in the first round specifically, isn't there's a bunch of honestly, there's at least half of the series where that just might not be true.
Right, or it's like, "Oh, actually, this guy wasn't the best player because this other guy who just happens to be hurt all the time and gets hurt in
You're
the playoffs might
angering
actually be the best
you're
player."
angering the Jalen Brunson or Cade Cunningham masses right now as we
Sorry.
speak. We're gonna begin with the series that will start first, and that is the Bucks versus the Pacers. I think some note, I don't want to step on I'll throw it to you first, like the narrative or the tactical wrinkle of it, but Damian Lillard is going to play at some point. That was really cool news.
Mhm.
It's something interesting when Shams prefaces it with amazing before he delivers his news drop. But it sounds like that blood clot was minor. They caught it early. He's already resumed some scrimmaging, ruled out for game 1, but who knows about game 2? Sounds like by game 3 or 4, though, like even if he's on a minutes limit, he should be back. So that's good because you just want to see all the best players available
Right.
in these series. So what is and I'm interested to see how much overlap we have because we didn't confer
Yeah.
on this at all. What is your biggest tactical wrinkle of this series?
So the thing I guess the thing I'm most focused on, and I think Lillard's availability changes some of this, but not a ton because you mentioned minutes limit. We don't know and missing game 1, and also like this is just me pretending to know about medical stuff, but it's like if you've got a blood clot in your calf, I would imagine you're not running a ton. And like, so there's going to be a conditioning component, I think. So whether that manifests in like you're playing less or you've only got a couple bursts per game and then you're just not conditioned and you're out of gas, like, and so Lillard could be diminished. The thing I'm looking at is just like, how do the Pacers attempt to contain Giannis? And does that mean it's doubles? Is it Siakam gets a crack at it? Miles Turner gets a crack at it? You're laughing because this is probably your tactical
Yeah.
thing too. And so like, it's just, I made a bold prediction piece for BR that hasn't gone up yet, but it's just like, I think Giannis might average 15 free throws a game. And like Shaq is the modern era leader at 10.4 per in the postseason. So like, and might that be a good idea? Might you just want to hack him all the time? So this all ties to like, oh, Giannis became a distributor with Dame out. Like, so maybe you can't just send 2 at him and get away with it. I just think it's going to be that's the most interesting make or break thing is like, how do the Pacers choose to guard Giannis? How does he choose to approach those coverages, which I would assume are going to involve multiple bodies because just the numbers of him going against Siakam and Turner individually are like the Bucks love it. So that's what I'm focused on tactically. What about you? Similar?
Yeah, it's similar. So the Damian Lillard news change is one thing, and I'll get to that. So there's like a little difference there, but I'm fascinated by not because you expect the Pacers to like they're not going to stop Giannis, and even containing him feels like all right. Is that really going to happen? But Siakam is registered as their most frequent defender on him this season. He's done like as a team. Like you could look at the individual like matchup numbers, but like when Siakam is guarding Giannis, the Bucks are averaging 1.12 points per possession. That's not out of this world. Like that's probably maybe a little bit higher than you would want. However, part of like Siakam's been really good on defense this year. I think like him and Andrew Nembhard like have been huge keystones for the Pacers like turnaround on that end of the floor. But what they like to do is because Siakam does so much on offense, he's not supposed to have in theory the Giannis assignment, but you get to a point where it's you go up and down the Pacers roster and it's when it's not Siakam, who should it be? And can that person buy Siakam any breaks so he can either he can pitch in or he can be like doing all this other stuff. I know a lot of people have mentioned Miles Turner. I think that's a non-option just because he's going to get in foul trouble. Brooke Lopez is on the floor as well in a lot of these minutes. The guy I'm looking at 2 guys now because the GOAT, Caitlin Cooper, wrote about one of them that I just didn't think would be dusted off a lot in this series. So Jarris Walker kind of deserves an honorable mention there where it's when you look at his body type and the way he moves, and just if you want someone to eat up fouls, that might be a guy to throw out there. I think a lot of like we're going to see some Aaron Nesmith, maybe a lot of Aaron Nesmith on a Giannis, and you could decide, as you mentioned, will there be the doubles or is it just Giannis eats, nobody else does? And maybe it depends on it. Maybe it should depend on Rick Carlisle's a smart coach. Like the lineups are out there. Like you might be able to be more aggressive with your doubles on Giannis when Kyle Kuzma's on the floor, just as an example. So do you put Siakam on Kyle Kuzma, Nesmith on Giannis, and then like you're having Siakam just, float around off of Kuzma? That might be ideal for the Bucks. Giannis is so good. And you can comment on this in a second, but if we were to differentiate from it, when you look at what he's done on offense since Damian Lillard went down with the facilitation, I'm just curious, especially if, as you mentioned, is Lillard going to be in shape? How many minutes is he playing? How do you keep that version of Giannis on offense now that Dame is back? Because they've defaulted to, okay, Dame's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And depending on who's guarding Giannis, I don't know how much you can, like, Dame is the screener. If Siakam is involved in the action, like, that just doesn't do it for me. So I'm very curious to see if the Bucks try to strike a different type of balance there. But the Giannis matchup versus the Pacers, I think, is for sure the most fascinating tactical wrinkle.
Yeah, I agree. There's just, I mean, it's so this is a case where we would agree that Giannis is the best player in the series, and I don't want to spoil it because we'll get to it, but it's like that doesn't guarantee that we're picking the Bucks to win the series. I think so. Dame is too good to be. I just kind of now I just want to touch on a couple other tactical things, like before we move on to the narrative and get to the X factor. There'll be some overlap. Dame is so, he's too good to be an X factor. Even though like the curveball of like how healthy is he, how conditioned is he, sort of like brings in some of the variability you would want in a good X factor pick.
Yeah.
But just like if not him, who are you? Because one of the weak points you could pick at with Indiana is trying to get Halliburton involved in like ball screen action defensively and just in isolation. And if Dame is like more of a spot shooter or whatever with Giannis on the ball because Dame just doesn't have the juice, that takes away a huge like second option for the Bucks to attack Indiana. Like maybe Giannis is enough. Maybe he's that overwhelming. But if you could involve, and Indy will work like hell to make sure Nembhard is the guy or to make sure Neesmith or whoever, just not Halliburton. If Toppin plays, keep Toppin out of those actions. But without Dame to be like orchestrating super high on the floor pick and rolls or just generally being someone that on the ball is dangerous, like Milwaukee really struggles to find somebody else that's gonna like push that button and maybe exploit one of Indy's weaknesses. Just another thing I was focused on.
Yeah, what do you have as the sort of, I mean, the other thing that's like kind of a tactical wrinkle here is, what do the Bucks' lineups look like, especially when you don't have Brook Lopez on the floor? Is Doc Rivers going to fall in love with Bobby Portis? Is he going to fall to him? Because some of like the lineups that are most intriguing during the Dame injury was like, well, Kyle Kuzma is not in them. And so you have to imagine that Doc Rivers is going to fall in love with one of Portis or Kuzma. I don't know if this is the series for either of them.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. This is really kind of one of the overarching things with Milwaukee is like you can't count on Kyle Kuzma to do what you need him to do in that role. Like, honestly, I think I'd rather just have Chris Middleton and not know if I was going to get 20 minutes of decent play or not. Like,
now that we're here and we've seen the sample size of Kyle Kuzma, Milwaukee, I'd
take the risk. I'd rather have the risk of like, yeah, he might miss 3 games in the series, but it's like, I know he's going to be, I know what he's going to give me in short burst. Yeah, I don't know. So I think we've kind of bumped against the narrative stuff a little bit. Do you want to just jump to that? Like there's obviously like the general bad blood between these two teams, which is awesome. That makes the series better. Just the play-in stuff or the in-season tournament stuff, game ball stuff, Halliburton's Dame time celebrate, like all that stuff is fun. Giannis just having a few games where he's absolutely lit them up and is just like, seems like a superhero. That's all fun. I think though, for me, this series I'm going to do like 3 narratives. One is like, oh shit, if the Bucks lose this, then we have to start talking about all the like Giannis tear it down trade stuff. But also like, wouldn't this be a pretty good first step in validating Indy's conference finals run last year that we always have to mention? It was like, it was a little suspect because of injuries and all that stuff. If they just win this series handily and combined with like just how good the Pacers have looked, once Halliburton kind of got himself figured out this year, I feel like it's a nice validation of like, okay, no, they actually are not just this like asterisk conference finalist that nobody believes in defensive. Like the Pacers we need to just regard them as a legit top 4 East team, which I still think a lot of people don't, you know what I mean? I think that's kind of what's at stake for Indy's side.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've been just, and this overlaps with the Nembhard return. They've been a top 10 defensive team for a good portion of this year, which is just, I don't think people view them as that. And this will be a good test of that. I think it's because you get pulled in so many different directions. the narrative stuff with Milwaukee, so I'm sort of looking at it like, well, what is the fallout for the team that loses? Because I honestly don't think making it to the second round as the Pacers against this Bucks team, it feels like there'll be more hoopla if they lose because I haven't even looked, they're probably favored to win. So it's just like beating this Bucks team if it's going to be a half hobbled Damian Lillard, like how much goodwill does that build up for you? But I'm looking at it as what happens to the team that loses. And you already talked about the Bucks stuff. We know they're Brook Lopez, a free agent. Bobby Portis could be a free agent. They have some room under the tax right now, but if you keep Brook Lopez, I assume that room is just gone. And so it's, well, how do you build out from there? Then on the flip side, though, if the Pacers lose, I don't think people view this as necessarily high stakes for them, but like they're thinking about financial concerns as you have Miles Turner going to be a free agent again. And you've already, like, you have Andrew Nemhard, like you've given him his deal. You have Obi Toppin on the books. You've paid Siakam and Halliburton, of course. And so if they lose, are they going to think about not like tearing it down, but are they going to be less inclined to continue reinvesting in, like, does it make it more likely that Turner leaves or they explore a sign and trade? Is it just, no, they think that there's still internally they could be better, so they're going to dump some salary to try and stay under the tax? I'm just curious to see how these teams, but I think there could be wholesale changes made over the offseason to the team that loses, which I don't think you always say in first round matchups.
Don't you think that applies like much more strongly to the Bucks though? Because like the Indy, for example, I hope nobody is annoyed that I always call them Indy. It's just I feel like if you're an Indiana Pacers fan, that might bother you. Like I don't know, because I don't have like the right.
It doesn't bother people as much as it would if you said New Orleans instead of New Orleans.
You know that from personal experience.
Yeah.
So because the Pacers sort of have, they're just like, we want to operate between like 40 and 54 wins indefinitely. Like that's what we're going for. And like Halliburton and Siakam aren't going anywhere. Halliburton's so young still relative to like other teams, like top guys, that like there seems to be like a narrower band of like, oh, what could a loss do to Indiana? It's like, well, you might lose Turner, you might not, like you might make some, like the big stuff's not going to change, but the Bucks, it's like, will this be hypothetically three straight first round exits? Because right, is that right? Because last year, I mean, and there's asterisks all over that because of injuries and stuff, but like that is what it is, and they're on the downside after a championship, which feels like 1,000 years ago at this point. It like the Giannis stuff will just get loud. It almost has to. So yeah, Indiana will have to address a few things, but like the Bucks are just like, this could be like someone might just push the red button.
I do think it's definitely warranted more for them. I guess I'm saying I think Indy has more at stake than people realize if it loses, and it works both ways. Like there'll be a level of validation, I guess, if they do win the series, but this is probably the spoilers. Like I expect them to win, so there might just be more. But look, if I was running the Pacers, I would not just tear apart. That's not what I was getting. Like I'm trying to keep Nemhard, Turner, Siakam, and Halliburton together. Like I've been like Nesmith is on a hell of a deal, but I'm just curious if they do lose to this version of the Bucks, does it make them rethink not even their desire to reinvest in this roster, but does it make it more likely that they decide, well, hey, we need to go out and get like another piece or like a different kind of piece, whether it's comparing it to Nesmith or Nemhard or Turner specifically, because I think Halliburton and Siakam are pretty comfortably etched in stone here. Who is your X factor for each of these teams?
So I wanted to pick Siakam, but I feel like he's probably still too good. I think I'll just stick with him though, because like he's gonna get the first crack at Giannis, and how that goes will inform like a lot of the rest of the series. Like if he, it might even be as simple as like in the first quarter of game one, if he's got to sit with, because he's committed 2 fouls in the first 5 minutes, and it's clear that like, no, we have to figure out where's the second body going to come from, because this one-on-one thing is just not going to work. That changes the whole series, because that means the Bucks have landed the first punch, and now Indy has to adjust. And like I think that's probably what's going to happen. But if he does hold up well, and maybe like, I don't know, draws a charge, or like Giannis starts the game one like 1 for 6 or something, which seems highly improbable because he just makes 6 out of 10 shots all the time. That changes the tenor of the series. I think if I had to pick one for the Bucks, it's probably just Brook Lopez, because if you have to pull Turner out of the lane to stay on him, you can't guard him with a small guy, because the Bucks are smart and maybe they'll throw a post up in there or whatever on a switch. That makes it really, really hard for Indiana to get a second guy in there to help on Giannis if Turner can't be that guy.
Yeah, so I went with Indy. I'm going with Aaron Nesmith. I know Turner is actually registered as the most, and Nesmith missed time this season, so that's part of it. Turner's been the second most frequent defender against Giannis, and possessions have not gone that well
Mm-hmm.
for the Pacers when that happens. I look at Nesmith and say, I think he winds up like you're going to see him on you're going to see him on Dame, you're going to see him on Giannis, and I don't think you can necessarily say that about anybody else. Like maybe
No.
Nemhard, like you see some spotter Siakam even, but so I think that's going to be huge. I thought about Caitlin Cooper's like piece on Jarris Walker at Basketball Shoot. Everyone should go check it out. I feel like he could be an X factor. I just don't know if he'll play enough for that to matter. So I went with Nesmith for the Pacers. And the Bucks one was oddly tough. I'm going to settle on that Damian Lillard's health or Damian Lillard would be the cop out to me. I'm gonna go with I think Ryan Rollins here.
Oh, that's fun.
How much does he play with Dame back? And like the stuff he could do defensively, like more so than anybody else on the roster right now, like that might make Tyrese Halliburton a little bit uncomfortable. And so whether you're trying to deny him the ball or you're just like what the Pacers do that the Bucks aren't always set up for is, all right, we know that they can play fast, but they will play fast after a miss. I think they're fifth in average offensive possession time, after a make. So if the Bucks make a shot, like Indy's still going to look to get the ball out and go. And the Bucks are just like, and some of the biggest culprits are their starters, like just Brook Lopez getting back at points, Damian Lillard, especially now, how easy it will be for defense to get that behind him. Do you pull the Ryan, like, do you push the Ryan Rollins button? You'll have to if Dame can't go for a good portion of the series or is on a strict minutes limit. But even if he's not, it's like Ryan Rollins has showed some real stuff defensively when he's gotten playing time for the Bucks. And that's something like the Bucks still really need.
The Buck that is such a true thing about the Bucks. First of all, the transition stuff has been like multiple years where it's just like, can you guys please like
not better? There's like ebbs and flows to it, but the peaks are never as stark as the valleys for them when it comes to transition defense.
But no, but that's what Rollins is a great pick because the other thing that's been a pretty constant issue is like, can just somebody be like a dynamic creator or like difference make? You know what I mean? Like whether it's defensively or offensively, the Bucks just other than Giannis, and even Giannis is kind of different because he's just like ramming into stuff. Like who's the guy that like Lillard isn't this guy, like Taurean Prince, AJ Green, like Kuzma, like Portis. None of these guys are like electrifying on one end or the other. Like there's no, I'm trying to think of like a good counter. Like Houston has like eight of these.
Electric on offense, maybe.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? There's nobody that's just like, everything feels, everything feels deliberate. Everything feels like plotting somehow. So yeah, Rollins maybe being that guy, if only defensively, is a pretty good one.
We move on. Oh,
are we going to pick?
We move on without making predictions. What's your pick for this series?
So I went Pacers in 6. That feels like a pretty common one. That means they have to win game 6 in Milwaukee, but I'm okay with that.
I'm going to go Pacers in 5.
Oh, wow.
I think they're pretty clearly the third best team in the Eastern Conference right now. And I think getting Damian Lillard back is big for the Bucks, but I'm just wondering game 1 without him and then game 2, if let's say he's back, he's going to be getting his bearings about for the 20 minutes or whatever he plays. It just wouldn't shock me if you go up 2-0 and then it feels like you could. So Giannis through all, what do we say about some of the best through all things? Giannis, like all things are possible through Giannis. Yep. So I wouldn't be shocked if you told me the Bucks won this series. I wouldn't be outright floored, but I think the Pacers are a really functionally deep and well-balanced team.
Yep. I agree with that.
We move on to Nuggets Clippers. And so I will begin with my tactical wrinkle for this one, Grant. How do the Denver Nuggets, and I guess this could apply to the Clippers at large, how do the Denver Nuggets go about defending James Harden in this one, who has been on kind of a heater? Like he was getting some all-NBA love by the end of the year, been super durable, has kept the offense afloat like before everyone's gotten healthy. And when you look at what the Nuggets have done, I still think that what Jokic does on defense is underrated, but I also recognize that like this has not been his best defensive season. Maybe don't make him carry like the universe's heaviest load on offense, and that won't be the case. But when you start to look at the setup of the Clippers right now, it feels like they could have an answer to anything that the Nuggets try to do. And so if you put Jokic in drop, we all know that that can be tough if you're going to give them the steam to get going downhill. But if you go, kind of soft at the level, or if you go ultra aggressive, your rotations from the corners better be on point And just like the Nuggets, they're not. Their 22nd is now allowed in corner three frequency. They're 25th when facing the Clippers, but they've never really faced this version of the Clippers. And the Clippers weren't hitting their corner threes against the Nuggets this season. But I'm just like, does this get worse for Denver when you're looking at if you have to help off of like Bogdan Bogdanovic in the corners? That it feels like you could be nuked. Like, is he going to cut? Is he going to just make? He's shot really well from the corners, I believe, this year. But the other thing is, you could play aggressive. And I think like their ideal scenario would be is Aaron Gordon blowing up screens before they're even set. And that probably puts Jokic in the optimal position. Or can you get someone like a Peyton? And I think Christian Brown's gotten a lot better at this, but could you have like Peyton Watson fighting over screens? I think that might make things a little easier. But if you play the Clippers, or I'll say James Harden specifically, so aggressively, it was different when it was like, yeah, go make Bogdanovich or Norman Powell beat you. And now it's like, well, the guy who beats you is Pete Kawhi Leonard, who just might beat you in that scenario. And so I'm just wondering, does Denver have even the best version of Denver right now? Does it have the defensive horsepower? This is so, I did not think this would have been, if you asked me like 3 months ago whether this would have been a question for a Clippers playoff series, but like, can the Nuggets defend this team?
So this wasn't my
that way instead of doing. I should have just asked that question rather than going through the whole.
No, so this wasn't my tactical pick. I focused on a Denver thing or an offensive thing, or basically the opposite of what you did. But now it's all I want to talk about because like for all of James Harden's flaws and like he played better than I think I gave him credit for all season. Like and just he is going to figure out how to beat like so pick and roll coverage. So like, would you prefer like you're David Adelman? I almost said Michael Malone. Would you rather have Jokic coming up to the level or like soft doubling or whatever and letting Harden decide to slip the pocket pass through or to see or to sling it to the other side corner? Or do you want to have Jokic in a drop and then expose yourself to Harden getting to shoot pull-up threes or getting downhill to shoot his floater? Like, what do you think Denver should, like, what's the better way to go if you had to pick one?
I think the numbers this season, when you look at Harden's shooting, are going to tell you to go and drop. And I really just feel like the actual answer for the Nuggets should be no, like we need to aggressively go after him and let's have him make those passes and have other players make decisions. But it's just, again, it's like I said at the close of it, it's like, well, one of those players making the decision might just be Kawhi.
That's the thing. That changes everything. Because before you'd be like, well, okay, so like as long as Chris Dunn is the guy we're leaving as Denver, then cool. Like let him, if Chris Dunn wants to go like 6 of 12 from 3 to beat us, we will just live with that. But if I just don't think, first of all, that's an interesting tactical wrinkle too. It's like, can you play Chris Dunn off the floor and then suddenly Jamal Murray has a lot more freedom to do stuff? But like the Kawhi of it all is like, we're focused on James Harden, like how they're going to guard James Harden, which is like a threshold issue. And the Nuggets have to figure that out. And then it's like, even if you do that perfectly, Kawhi Leonard might just go, what did he shoot against Golden State? It was like 13 of 17. It was just like, he's never going to miss a shot. He never takes a bad shot. Like, and that's your, like, he's not really your second option, but he's the second guy we're thinking about, which is completely nuts. That's a fascinating thing to think about. Just for some conversational diversity, I kind of flipped it and went with like, so I was fascinated by how JJ Redick had the Lakers guard Jokic a couple times this year, which nobody had ever really done consistently or effectively, which is like you're fronting him with somebody. There's someone behind him.
There's a name for that now. Do you remember what the Jokic rules?
That was Jokic rules. Yeah. So can the Clippers effectively implement the Jokic rules? And is that what Jokic wants? Because he's been thinking about it for 2 months and he's figured it out. Like he's like, please do it. I know how to beat this coverage. And then just more generally, it's kind of the Harden question, but it's focused on the best player in the world. Do you get the ball out of his hands? Is that just inviting disaster? Or do you say like, hey, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Jamal Murray, whatever, probably not Michael Porter Jr., shoot all the threes you want. We know Nuggets, you don't want to shoot a lot of threes. We know you don't shoot a lot of threes. If we just force it out of Jokic's hands with doubles, can we make you take shots you don't want to take? Or is that just like, good idea? Let's turn the best passer on the planet into someone that's passing the whole game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or is it Jokic pulls Zubats out of the lane and has to make 5 or 6 threes to sort of like make that coverage approach pay off. It's the same thing as Harden. It's like, what do you do with this guy?
Well, and like, I mean, the way Jokic's been shooting threes, though, the latter is just not going to be the worst case in the world for Denver by any
Right.
stretch.
But he doesn't want to do that. He
No.
would prefer not to do that.
Yeah, that'll be, man, this is going to be such a fascinating series, especially just given how well the Clippers have been playing of late. So narratively, I'm assuming we probably have something similar here
I don't know.
to where I'm just wondering, okay, well, what is the fallout for the Nuggets if they lose in the first round? And it's because, okay, we know that there's a head coach vacancy. Technically, I'm sure David Adelman will get a chance to keep the gig. But when you're looking at prospective roster changes, there's reporting that I think it was from The Athletic that the ownership just won't move Michael Porter Jr. I don't think Jamal Murray's contract is viewed very favorably around the league. And if you're just getting bounced in the first round, I'm assuming it's going to be viewed even less favorably. He's been good. He's been really good, though, for like 3 months. And I think you also run into the challenge, though, is like, even if you want, I'm not saying that Michael Porter Jr. should be untouchable, but if you're trying to construct trades to make the Nuggets better, I don't really see a pathway to doing that while trading any one of your top 5 players right now, because you don't have stuff to attach to them that's like, well, we're giving up Michael Porter Jr. and we're getting better in the process. And it's just very rare that you have those trades where it's 1 for 2 and maybe you balance out your rotation and it's fine. But this Nuggets team, we know Jokic doesn't want to shoot threes. Like, if you trade Michael Porter Jr., aside from Murray and Jokic, like, who are you trusting to get threes up with any reasonable amount of volume? You better be getting 1 or 2 players back who could do it. And so I'm not saying that the Nuggets are definitely going to lose, but they are the team with more at stake here. And so I'm kind of watching. Doesn't it feel like, I don't know what it will be, and I can almost assure you that if I had to predict that they will make the wrong decision at this point, but doesn't it feel like there will be one sort of big domino to fall if the Nuggets lose in the first round? And so I'm just very curious to see how they respond in the face of those stakes right now.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about the Clippers as the team with nothing to lose, because they aren't supposed to be here. And yet they are, because that you got Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. Like, is your timeline win in 5 years? Like, no, this team is, if it's supposed to do anything, it's supposed to win now. We just didn't think they'd do any winning this year.
Yeah.
So it feels it's weird that they don't have stakes. So my narratives, I'm realizing, are skewing very unsophisticated, which is okay, because that's what the tactical is supposed to be. Sophisticated narrative is kind of like, what's the cool story?
What was sophisticated about will the Nuggets blow it up was basically
no, because you're thinking ahead, and it's like, I'm just like, so you'll see what I mean. So I kind of have a dual one, and the first is like the legitimacy of this Clippers season, and more importantly, like the whole Kawhi Leonard, like, hey guys, remember me? Like, remember I was the best 2-way player in the league, like arguably at this time last year. Like, when before he got hurt, like he's like this is the guy, this is the sleeping giant, like, that just is always kind of around, like, and we've thought he's been done annually for like half a decade. And then sometimes he does things where it's like, oh no, he actually is, you name it. Like I'd rather have him than Shea. I'd rather have him than Tatum, whatever. Like, he hits that level sometimes. Might that happen? That would be awesome. Like, I'm here for that. The other one is Jokic, just in the wake of a tumultuous season, in the wake of almost definitely not winning MVP, reminding the whole world with like multiple 50-point games, just like, hey, no, it's me. Just in case anybody had any doubt, I'm still that guy. And I don't care if the Clippers on paper are probably the better team. That doesn't matter, because I'm that transcendent. Like, I actually am rooting more than anything. I would love to see both. I would love to see Kawhi stay healthy and just be incredible. But what I really want, and maybe it's because because of the picking Jokic for MVP thing, and maybe it's just because I really like the feeling of like it, whether it's in a playoff series or a season altogether. I like the concept of like, oh no, order restored. Like, we all understand again, right, what the rules are here and like what the real hierarchy is. That would be really satisfying. Not to take anything away from Shea. That's not just an MVP thing. I just like it when the very, very best guy asserts that in the face of like a fair amount of doubt. Like, when's the last time there was this much like uncertainty about a Jokic-led team. You know,
Well, before at the title year, people were still clinging to the trope of
right.
you can't
And
build a title team around
yeah,
him.
so I'm here for that. I would
I
be very excited for that.
I did have 2 runners up.
Mm,
So he and they're kind of connected because it's like playoff James Harden is the inverse of playoff Jamal Murray, where it's like Jamal Murray is this regular season mystery or
yeah.
roller coaster, and then he becomes a killer in the playoffs. And so we're sitting here wondering about the Nuggets defense. It's what if so much of it changes because Jamal Murray locks in
Mhm.
and is healthy defensively. But like he was dealing with, was it the hamstring stuff that Michael Malone was worried about? So that could be something minor. But then James Harden, and it's more so lately too. If you look at, his efficiency in the playoffs tends to go down, but it's not like by an egregious margin. It just seems like in important games or over the course of the series, there is, I'm just throwing a number out here, like, oh, James Harden went 6 of 18 from the floor
Yep.
or something. Does that happen again? But also, what if it doesn't and he's just like the driving force of why the Clippers beat what I think people, for the most part this year, have defaulted to the Nuggets as the second best team in the West? That definitely
Mhm.
changed over the last month or so. But like, what if he just goes thermonuclear against that team? And so will it change your impression of James Harden at all? I'm just so much stuff there. But who are your X factors for this
Well, you
series?
touched on it. For me, it's Murray. Just because every piece of analysis from the Denver side changes if Murray is the type of, if the Nuggets can get into their two-man game and Murray is good enough to actually take on like more of a, like not a secondary role in it, because the Nuggets are most dangerous when Murray is hyper aggressive and is effective as a scorer in the two-man game, because then it's impossible, because you can't ever get away with diverting attention from Jokic. But if Murray is that good, and we've seen it, like you alluded to it, like there have been playoff series where he's just looked like there's no solve for him. And but you measure that against like, oh, he might also be hurt and ineffective defensively and just like not a threat, and the Clippers are happy to have him take a bunch of shots. So I just think it's crazy to say in a series that has Kawhi Leonard and has James Harden, who've had their playoff ups and downs to extreme degrees for different reasons. I just think Murray is the guy that, non-superstar division that is going to swing this series.
I went for the Nuggets. I was toggling between Christian Brown and Peyton Watson because Brown saw more time against Harden defensively this year than anybody else on the Nuggets. But I think I'm going to go with Peyton Watson because it's either way, like he's going to need to cover at some point, like one of the Clippers' 2 elite scorers.
Mhm.
And I think he can do at least, I think he can do relatively well. The numbers against Harden like aren't great this year for him, but it was only like 30 possessions or something I think he logged. But like you need him to do stuff consistently on offense if you want to keep him on the floor
Yeah.
as a means of juicing your defense. Even if it says, okay, well, Gordon and Brown, like they're going to handle Harden, Kawhi in just some combination. But it's like we want Peyton Watson there is either going to be someone who's helping or just blowing up stuff elsewhere. Like he can do a lot of the low man things really well. But like if he's not hitting threes,
Yep.
like because the Clippers defense is already good enough, you don't need to give them more hiding spots. So I think I'm going to go with Peyton Watson. Uh, so can I cop out on the Clippers X factor though?
Sure.
I want to go with a position. I'm going to say backup center because and maybe that makes it Ty Lue, just because we know Jokic is going to so if this was like the optimal version of the Nuggets, Jokic is still going to play like 40 or 42 minutes a night. With
Mhm.
this version of the Nuggets, he might play like 44 to 48. You
Right.
can't do that with Zoo. So it's not going to be, we're going to try and mirror one, you would risk foul trouble for sure with
Mhm.
him, but you're not going to mirror their minutes perfectly. And so I do think there's going to be, even if Jokic plays like 38, 40, there's going to be times where Jokic is on the court and Zoo is not, I would imagine. And what do you as the Clippers, I don't have the answers. It's just like you just downsize and go Batum. And I mean, is it Derek Jones and Simmons in the front court to get Ben Simmons in the front court together? I'm going to be really interested to see what they go with over the course of, and maybe they'll try a bunch of different things. But I was thinking about that, and maybe it's not going to be a large enough portion of the minutes on the court, but just like if Jokic plays 42 minutes, I don't know how much more than like 34 or 36 Zoo gets. So then all of a sudden we're talking about like 8 or 10 minutes a game or something.
Yeah, then you just, and like look, we've like, circling all the way back, like some of the Jokic rule stuff, you might just need to spend 5 minutes a game getting real gimmicky with, you got two sort of combo forwards basically playing like a two-man zone against one guy in the middle of the floor. Like that might just have to be how it is, because you even Zubats is like any single defender is just like overmatched, really. But
Yeah.
Zubats has got the size at least to where like post ups will be difficult, and you can't necessarily pass over his head like Jokic likes to do against smaller matchups. So yeah, I think that's a good one. The Peyton Watson Chris Dunn like binary is really interesting or too, because it's like both teams want those guys out there because of what they do well, but it may just be that thing in a playoff series where what they don't do well means they're playing 7 minutes a game all of a sudden.
So who did you have as the X factor for the Clippers?
I have Murray. Oh, for the Clippers, I didn't pick one. I'll say I think I have to pick Dunn. Because that's someone you probably want on the floor so that Harden and even Kawhi don't have to have like heavy minute, tough defensive matchups. Kawhi, you're probably fine with, but like I would like Dunn out there defensively if I'm the Clippers, especially to keep Murray from getting loose.
Nuggets Clippers prediction, Grant.
I'm gonna do the trenchant analysis of, while I respect everything about the Clippers and I think they're super dangerous, I think Nikola Jokic is the solution to every problem, and the Nuggets are going to win in 7.
I'm going Clippers in 6. They've been too dynamic over the past like 2.5 months or whatever it's been. And maybe I'm sort of reading just too much into the behind the scenes turmoil that Denver was slogging through all year, and perhaps ripping off that Band-Aid does sort of what do you call it? It's not the fired coach bounce anymore. So they got rid of like the executive too. Is it just like just whatever it is? Maybe there'll be a bounce for Denver, but I think the Clippers have been so good over the past couple months. This next series, I doubt either of us have anything much to say about it, but Knicks versus Pistons. What's the tactical wrinkle you're going with?
How do the Knicks avoid getting Jalen Brunson and Cat involved in a pick and roll with Cade every single time down the floor? Like that's like, because if that doesn't happen, then the Pistons can win this series. Like if Detroit is allowed to pick on one or both of those guys frequently enough, I really do think the Pistons could score enough to win here.
I think that's very fair. I'm actually wondering if and like Cade is killed the Knicks this year.
31 a game,
30 points per game, shooting like 55+% from 3. Yep. I think the keys for the Knicks, and I feel like they've been better at this when they are cross matching, but like you need to, the way that Cade is driven the transition attack, he's in the top 5 of just, especially after misses. Like if he's grabbing a board, he's going. If he's not, he's put himself in the center of a floor to make sure that he's getting the outlet quickly and having the Pistons get in their offense. I feel like the Knicks, because maybe if you're cross matching, you're more focused on getting back because you're not just matching up with what was the matchups on that side of the floor. Or is it just because, okay, do you try and like lure Cade into like, I'm trying to go hunt Brunson, but he's not starting the possession on me. So that's not, but yeah, that's a really interesting one. The Knicks have actually done pretty well against Detroit's transition attack this year overall. But like the numbers are the numbers with Cade, and they're 1-3 against the Pistons this year. I ultimately kind of wonder though, like it goes both ways. I'm not intimidated, like just as an observer, by the Pistons' half-court attack.
Right.
But like, because you have those pain points to press with Towns and Brunson, like you don't need the Pistons half-court offense to be elite to have those elite returns.
Well, and because there's no scenario for the Knicks where it's like, I don't care how bad the pick and roll coverage gets or how much Towns is getting dragged into stuff or Brunson, like you're not taking either of those guys off the floor unless like, you know what I mean? Like unless Cat has a bunch of fouls or whatever, like they're going to be out there. And so that'll just be, maybe this will put it on a tee for you, but like it may at some point require Tom Thibodeau to get like creative or more flexible than he otherwise likes to be with the way he's covering, like, because doesn't the easy solve seem to be just put 2 on Cade, get the ball out of his hands, and dare anybody else to make a play? Like,
Stop
isn't that the move?
Tom Thibodeau to put 2 on the ball, please.
Isn't that the move though? Like that has to be it.
I think they've decided the move would be, because it is harder. You're not going to necessarily involve both of them. Like Brunson spent a lot of time on Tim Hardaway Jr. this year. So if you want Tim Hardaway Jr. screening for Cade, you probably live with that. I'm actually wondering if the move, because if you're asking me, I do not think that the Knicks are going to get to a point where they're consistently throwing like 2 at Cade in this. And I think
I don't think so either. I think they should.
I would probably agree, but when you've looked at what happens when they go with 2 on the ball, their rotations can just be whack.
How is that possible? They have Bridges and Anunoby. Those guys should be able to.
That's what I'm getting at. Is I'm wondering do you think it makes more sense, because I think as always, there's like the extreme view of Mikal Bridges, and then there's like the too optimistic view, and then there's the truth, which is somewhere in between. I don't think he's been awful this year. The start was rough, but like I am wondering, is it better to put just OG Anunoby on Cade? Because then that's going to like maybe does that get the ball out of Cade's Cunningham's hands more? Or at least then it's, well, then OG Anunoby's going to be involved in every pick and roll. And he's already shouldering kind of a heavy role on the offensive end now, but you just deal with it. And then if you want to throw two to the ball, you have Josh Hart. Maybe you use Brunson a little bit in that, but like Bridges could be better off elsewhere. So it's like, at least because I think if you have Towns and Mikal Bridges involved in a Cade pick and roll, you're actually at a pretty mega disadvantage right now, is basically what I'm getting at. And so I don't love the idea of having OG Anunoby have to defend Cade, but I'm just wondering if that ends up being the antidote in this series. Then if you're looking to not just, because to me, it's not just about insulating Brunson Towns. I think the Knicks will move around the matchup to make sure that, okay, you're not going to see them involved. Yeah, they'll both be involved in pick and rolls at some point, but it won't be as often as maybe some are expecting. But like, just because it's Mikal Bridges instead of like, how big of a win has that been for the Knicks statistically? In this matchup specifically, I do not know.
Do you? I think Bridges has gotten the bulk of the time on Cunningham. Do you think they'll start the series that way with Bridges has the Cunningham assignment?
I think so. That would be
so
my
too.
guess.
And yeah, it's like
you're hoping, because one of the things that Bridges is not going to do well, like that's not someone who's necessarily going to help insulate Karl Anthony Towns the way that OG Anunoby can.
Yeah. What's your tactical?
Josh Hart is just the tactical. I want to know what the Pistons are going to do against him, because so far they have not gone the route of, when you look at the data among players who qualify as primary ball handlers, rim protectors, Jalen Johnson's the only one who's seen more time against rim protectors. And that's like, he hasn't played since late January or whatever it was. The Pistons have not done that against Hart predominantly. And so I'm wondering though, why wouldn't you like have Jalen Duren on like Josh Hart, have him roam? And then you kind of like, okay, there might be some Towns medicine to take, but that's going to free you up to do so many things defensively. And also, I also don't know why you wouldn't do that when like Cade is seeing time against Brunson. So why wouldn't you want to have the option of like, okay, like we can bring Jalen Duren off of Josh Hart there? So I'm curious to see if they do that. But even if they don't, like Josh Hart is shooting under 30% from three over the past like 50 plus games. And so how do the Knicks respond if that's happening? I think Josh Hart does a lot of things really well. He's a ball mover. He's a pace setter. He hits the glass hard. He can be an opportunistic cutter. But like, if he's not, like, he can damage this team on offense if he's not hitting his, regardless of who you have as the primary defender on him, he can really shrink the floor. And so if that happens, do you stick with him just because it's Josh Hart and he's played 1 trillion minutes since he came to you? Or is it, well, let's see what Deuce looks like with the starters, or let's even see, honestly, my two preferences, I love Deuce, but just like Brunson and Deuce on the court together, like you're just so small. Do you just go to Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns at that point? And it's, you know what, like that'll one, it might help your defense on offense, even though you're weaker on offense, because you'll get more offensive rebounds. You should, in theory, just end more possessions with a made shot, gives your defense a chance to get set. And then if like Josh Hart's not making his threes, I don't know that he's going to bring enough defensively, or you need him to bring enough defensively this series where you can talk me out of just hitting the Landry Shamet button. Like, let's get someone in there who's shooting 40% from three and been taking them at a fairly like high clip per 36 minutes. If I had to guess, the Knicks are not going to move off of Josh Hart at all. But I do think that's, whether it's a coaching thing, a Josh Hart thing, a Pistons thing, there's all these moving parts involved. I honestly think that is kind of sort of the structural lineup decision that could wind up defining this entire series.
Josh Hart's my X factor for all of the reasons you just laid out.
What would you do though in that situation of, okay, the Josh Hart's not hitting his, like, here's my thing. The Josh Hart experience is going to go sideways. It might be temporary, but there are just going to be games where it doesn't work out. If you're the Pistons, are you exploring putting Duren on him more? Oh, you are. And then if you're the Knicks and he's not capitalizing on that, like even going downhill or shooting his threes, forget about what Tom Thibodeau will do. What would you prefer him to do?
I mean, what I think you got to do if you're having a wing being guarded / not guarded by Duren in this case, is I think then you have to have him involved in screening action, because it's like, if Duren's not coming out to guard Josh Hart, it can't just be, well, Josh Hart, we're going to live and die on whether you're one, willing, and two, able to shoot a bunch of threes. That's like, the Pistons would be elated if that's just how the series plays out on that end of the floor. So I think you just have to be like the pitch and pitch back game with Brunson and Hart. And maybe that leads to a bunch of Brunson open threes. Like, you got to find a way. You can't just take Hart off the floor, and you can't just let Hart determine the outcome of the series by shooting threes. So like, there are other ways to do it. You can get away with non-shooters, not being guarded if you put the ball in their hands more, not to create, but to like play the handoff game, or play the pitch and pitch back game, set screens up high for a shooter you want to take shots. Like, you got to do that, because as the Knicks, it's like they don't have the rotation depth to just excise somebody who plays the number of minutes Hart does from the rotate. Like, you can't. Shamit might be a fun, like, 5 to 7 minute once in a while, let's try it, but you're not going to suddenly give him 30 minutes. Like, that's not a plausible option. So that's what I would do. I don't know if the Knicks will do that. I can't remember watching if they've done that this year. They probably haven't been like, this is a playoff thing. You don't just like pull out your best, like, oh, let's let Josh Hart beat us tonight defensive tactics in January,
I actually think the Pistons are going to end up putting, like they've used Hardaway or Cade against him most of the time. And I mean, like, if Cade's on him, like, you could argue that that's even worse for the Knicks to some extent, just for what he'll be able to do then. My X factor because you had Josh Hart for the Knicks, I have Tom Thibodeau, just because I think I outlined kind of all the tactical decisions there. And I honestly believe that if the Knicks lose this series, we know he'll lose his job. But like, I do think that most of the blame will fall on him, because if they lose this series, I think it's because they didn't even try to adapt nearly enough. I think he's stuck to his overarching ethos, which is my guys. And it's because one time he lost a double-digit lead with like 90 seconds left or some bullshit, whatever he uses the excuse nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that really does make it so that the Pistons' entire goal of this series should be to like, let's make it so that like we are forcing adjustments. Like, let's see if he's willing to bend a little bit in one way or another.
Yeah, Bobby Clintman's going to play, and what was Tom Thibodeau?
He's not on the scouting report. What do we do? What's the narrative for you?
We skipped that one right to the X factors. Well, let's skip and go to who is your Pistons X factor?
I struggle with this a lot. Like, I think Beasley is the easy choice, but like, I also don't think the Knicks are going to let him get loose. Just his presence is still going to matter because you can't let him get loose and shoot a bunch of threes. So I think I might just go with a tie between Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr., just as the other guys that might benefit from some of the coverages. I guess I'm saying I hope New York plays against Cade, because somebody's going to get opportunities, and that may be just Harris getting to attack a closing out cat, or like Mitchell Robinson suddenly finds himself trying to cover Harris in the corner or something like that. And both of those guys, Hardaway and Harris, I think have enough variability that they make good X factor picks, because it's like, you could imagine either of them going 1 for 6, and you can imagine either of them going, 7 for 11. And that's why the Pistons win a game.
Yeah, those are good ones. I'm going to go with Asar Thompson, just because I think that the Knicks are going to try and quote unquote hide some people on him, but just his off ball speed, ability to crash the glass. And even just like, if you have Brunson on Asar, or even just like a small, like if you're trying to hide it, like during Shamit minutes, or just maybe if you're the Knicks, you're trying to stash Karl Anthony Towns on Asar Thompson at points. Like, you could use Asar Thompson as like someone's going to screen for him. Like, that is something that the Pistons can absolutely go to. So I think if the Knicks like go any of those different directions, I think Asar becomes like an X factor for a number of reasons for Detroit on the offensive end. Narratively, I'm looking at this, and the stakes are so low for the Pistons that I'm looking at it through a Knicks lens, and it's just, how good or not is this Knicks team? Like, that's the question you're kind of asking, and whose heads. Because it'll be heads. I think Tom Thibodeau will lose his job if they lose this series, and maybe even they get trucked in the second round. But like, what other changes will the Knicks make as the result of this series if they don't win, or maybe even if they do win? I think a lot of people expect them to try and figure out a way to go get a more available higher-end center than Mitchell Robinson. I just want to let everybody know that's actually a problem when you're paying Karl Anthony Towns so much money. I know we saw it work with him and Rudy Gobert in Minnesota, but like, you're not teaming with assets to go do all these things. And so I know you didn't give up necessarily a boatload to get Towns, but you're paying him a boatload. And if you don't think that he can be your 5 in a playoff series, maybe the change is moving Karl Anthony Towns rather than trying to protect Karl Anthony Towns against his weaknesses. When, look, there are points he can punish guys in the post. The driving game's absurd. The passing is great, and he does space the floor. But like, this is year 92 of being like, well, why didn't he take more threes though?
Right. I have the same thing basically. I just have written down this is a referendum on the Knicks all-in moves, like because based on everything you said of like any changes you make now in the wake of potential failure is like they're gonna be seismic because there is no room for small ones, and so like this needs to be, I think, like a pretty handy Knicks win followed by probably like at least a highly competitive second round series where I'm jumping ahead, but like we're going to have the like, the reckoning with this roster if this goes badly for the Knicks, because like I don't think there are small tweaks available. You're firing the coach. You're trading like a guy who played 38 minutes a game. Like that's the only big moves remain basically. So and the Pistons, I agree. It's like, what? Okay, so if the Pistons get swept, is anybody that mad? Like, I don't think so. It just has to be a Knicks thing.
Someone will be mad. Someone will be mad. Let's remember to do the prediction on this series. What's your pick?
I think we spent a lot of time talking about the Knicks, like potential frailties here, and we have given short shrift to like, this team's really hard to guard when they're at their best. And they do have the defensive personnel outside of Cat. Like they have the wings to do. I think it's Knicks in 6. And I think part of that is the Pistons, not that they're going to have like happy to be here syndrome, but it's like they just don't have the sheer depth of top end talent that the Knicks have. And I think the Knicks have the experience advantage. We've seen Brunson just get 40 for 4 straight. Like, there's just too many different ways for the Knicks to win this series on offense. I think that I think the Pistons are very good. I just think the Knicks they've got the tactical advantages, the experience advantages, all that stuff.
I'm with you, Knicks in 6. And I think like a large reason is, for as flawed as the Knicks are as a team, their margin for error is going to be smaller against the teams that are to come rather than the Pistons, who their margin for error in this series is, what if Cade doesn't go kaboom? Then you probably lose that game. And that's just, I mean, like, unless Schroeder or Beasley and just even like guys like Ron Holland and Asar Thompson have been really valuable this season, especially on the defensive end into their transition attacks. Those aren't always guys, when you look at their perimeter limitations, that hold up too well in the playoffs. I don't know. The Knicks were 12th in defense. I think their defense is kind of, not that it's underrated, but people are just like, oh, they suck. And it's like, no, they just can't defend the elite teams, which is a problem after the first round.
And it's like a relative thing too. It's like, you're not going to say like, I'm worried about the Knicks offense. Like, no, I think they're all right there. It's like, if we have to pick something.
If you were to like be concerned though, it's that Brunson's actually, when you look, been pretty good against the Pistons this year, and the Knicks are still just 1-3. And so it's like our next series, Lakers Timberwolves. I think this is the series that I had the toughest hold of, like, or had the toughest time getting a hold of. So my tactical thing here might be pretty like baseline. How are the Timberwolves? Are they going to change anything about how they defend Luka Doncic relative to when he was with the Mavericks, where I think the default has been, and I assume it will still be, Jaden McDaniels on Luka Doncic? But what are you like? Are you sending 2 to the ball in that instance? When you look at last year in the playoffs, Luka shot 18 of 39 against him with 4 shooting fouls when it was Jaden McDaniels defending him. Apologies if I said Jalen before. Dallas did only average 1.08 points per possession on those plays, which I think that's, if you're on possession where Luka Doncic had the ball at any point, you'll take that as a W. But like, the Lakers have LeBron James and Austin Reeves, and Dallas really only had Kyrie to do that stuff last year. I'm so curious to see if they try to throw in any more aggressive wrinkles, or do they think like, will you move Jaden McDaniels around? And I think part of that tactical wrinkle is not to make this is almost a little X factory, but like, the Jaden McDaniels offensive experience, even when the threes are going in, like, I'm kind of at the point where it's meh. I don't think it's structural with the Timberwolves anymore, like I kind of did last year. I think he kind of is what he is. And so if he's getting not torched, but like, I guess you could say, well, he's a body we could throw on Luka, and then he's not really giving you too much. Even again, he could shoot 43% from 3 in this series, and the Lakers just, all right, cool. Like, Luka's going to stay on you anyway. And so does it complicate it by maybe I'm overthinking this, but if you don't put Jaden on Luka, the Lakers are going to want to put Luka on Jaden, I assume. And so do you want to try and throw the wrinkle of let's force the Lakers to cross match rather than make it too easy on them? It was that. And I thought the super low hanging fruit was just like, well, how does the Lakers just lack of size and they're like, if you want Jared Vanderbilt to be your 5, or it's like basically go with no, not even conventional, but no big man type player. How does that work against a Wolves team that is pretty huge still,
Yeah.
even without talent? Like Randall, Rudy, and Nas, like those are real like big guys.
Mm-hmm. So my tactical is the Lakers small ball against and like it's specifically Gobert. This is like we're playing the hits. This is like the oldie but a goodie for any Rudy Gobert playoff series. But like the Lakers specifically, so the samples are all small, but I really do think there's going to be some like real there's going to be an option for the Lakers to really mess with the Wolves by going small. And that's partly just because like you have in LeBron and Luka and Reeves 3 on the ball, like passers and playmakers that like, it's just when the floor is spaced and you have 60% of the guys on your team are just like, oh my God, they're a threat to just break the defense by themselves. That's a lot to deal with. And I don't think this is if Gobert winds up dominating this series somehow, I would be very, very surprised. I think what's more likely is the Lakers downsize, they spread the Wolves out, and they score enough to make, the Wolves offensive like clunkiness just they can't, break even. With LeBron at center overall, there's been like 700 possessions this year for the Lakers with LeBron at center. They're a plus 3.1, but the most used lineup, which is the one you want if you're the Lakers, it's the Doncic, Reeves, Finney-Smith, Hachimura, LeBron, plus 19.4 net rating, like and a 130 offensive rating, and they're above average defensively. I believe more in the 130 than the above average defense, believe it or not. That I think that's a real problem. And like, I don't know, like if you're the Wolves, how do you punish? I guess you'd say offensive boards, I guess. But I like other than that, like how are you punishing the Lakers for playing smaller and making Gobert either defend in space or take him off the floor somehow? Like that's the Lakers side. The other thing we gotta talk. Well, I'll get to it in the X Factor. I can kind of shoehorn the other, it's like semi-tactical thing in there. But what do you think about that? Like does the Lakers small ball thing not scare you, or do you view it more through the prism of like how are the Lakers going to handle just a lineup on the other side that like everybody but Mike Conley is either actually huge or plays bigger than their position?
I've gone back and forth with this one because I normally tend to think that the small ball forces more like the team that's not going small is the one that's going to have to adjust more is kind of how I assume that, unless it's just sort of like if the Clippers go small against the Nuggets, it's well, look at what you're small, but like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Denver's not going to adjust too much there. But I don't know what I think I'm just too low on the Lakers, and it just doesn't make any sense is really what it is, because they've outperformed their point differential more than any other team. But like, okay, like we have an entire season of them just doing that. Pre-Luka trade, post-Luka trade doesn't matter. And like you're talking, the small ball numbers are kind of insane. And with the growth of Austin Reeves too, to just give you 3 dynamic creators on the court at once, maybe I'm just like, if you have to take Rudy Gobert off, like then you just have Naz Reid though. Is that like that's someone who's better suited to, or if Rudy's not suited, like Naz Reid is going to be perfectly suited, I would think, to go up against some of those small ball units. But I guess, you know what it is? I think even when the Lakers go small, I feel like there'll always be a spot to put Gobert or another one of the Timberwolves bigs. Now, if you get a little worried because it's, well, then what are you doing with Randall? But like, if Jared Vanderbilt is on the court, like, all right, there you go, hiding spot for Rudy. Fuck, I'm leaving. I know he shot the ball better, but if Gabe Vincent is on the floor, now I'm gonna like I'll leave Rudy on the floor too. And so, what is there like a specific small ball combination that you don't think the Wolves would be able to combat by doing something like that?
Well, you make a good point, because like let's say the lineup I referred to, if you leave Gobert out there, I guess you probably put him on Hachimura, and then it's like then you kind of don't guard him. And then it becomes how many threes can Hachimura make? This is sort of a Josh Hart thing, although I think Hachimura is just a more dangerous shooter and has been in the playoff before, where it's like there's workarounds, right? You can You can make the give and go stuff with Hachimura. You can have him set ball screens. You can do all kinds of stuff. It's like Warriors Draymond stuff where it's like nobody guards Draymond, and sometimes he does shoot the three, but other times he just like Steph passes him the ball and Steph runs towards him and Draymond screens Steph's guy and Steph has an open three because the guy guarding Draymond's nowhere near him. And or in this hypothetical, it's like Rudy Gobert has to run out to try to get back involved. And now you got Rudy Gobert up in a pick and roll, and you're pretty good with that if you're the Lakers. So I think, yeah, there are two sides to the coin. I just think that the Wolves, like the Wolves are the team that's going to have to adjust. I think if the Lakers go small, and I think that's just going to favor the Lakers. It's not like a guarantee. It's not a given, but I'm just going to trust the multiple playmakers in a space floor against a team that like, just, I don't know. It's not just Gobert. Like Conley's someone that you're going to, if as the Lakers, you're going to pick on too. And then that's going to, I keep like butting up against what my X factor is going to be.
It looks like we might be having one of the same X factors there.
Okay.
Doesn't it kind of work? I mean, you said it already. There's two sides to the coin. But so if the Lakers go small and the Wolves have to adjust, is it the worst thing in the world to give Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards more space? Like with Gobert off the court, that's just Naz Reid. They're going to then have more space to work with. And I think, look, if you throw two to the ball and Anthony Edwards, like that's where, and that's, by the way, I think that's what I would do if we were talking about defending Anthony, because the Lakers don't have, but I think, who is the Lakers' best Anthony Edwards defender? It's probably Vando. Maybe it's DFS.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say of guys that are actually going to play, like, because I don't know if Vanderbilt's going to play a ton. Yeah, it's probably DFS.
But like, if you're going to do that, like, I would just throw two to the ball at Ant because I think that's where he's still like his decision making can be a little bit off.
100%.
Some of what Julius Randle does best, though, is just like you get him going downhill, especially if it's single coverage. Like he'll spray out and find shooters.
Okay. We got to talk about this. There's like 17 tactical things we have. And they all like lead into the other. So you got to throw two at the ball when Ant has it, right? Because one, you don't have the singular stopper, and two, you're going to force a bunch of other Wolves to like prove you can generate consistent offense, right? Like that seems like the move. If I'm the Lakers, I'm ecstatic that there's a possibility Julius Randle is going to have to try to beat me as a primary creator.
You're looking at those like playoff series in New York.
I love it. I want it if I'm the Lakers. You can't give that option to me soon enough. I'm just going to say, I think Mike Conley's an X factor. And like, this is also related, right? Because he has to be, because he's the only other guy that you're like, okay, we got it out of Ant's hands. Conley's going to get us something. Like he's going to make the right decision. He might be the outlet that makes an open shot. I think if you're the Lakers, you don't want to leave him. You want to force him to try to execute and pick and roll. But if he can't guard anybody, that's the thing. Like, who are you putting Mike Conley on? Like, that's going to be really tough. Conley has to play for the Wolves offense to work, especially if the ball's forced out of Ant's hands. But if he's on the floor, that's like every single time down, Luka and LeBron are going to try to get him switched out to them and just attack him. Like,
It hasn't gone well this year when they tried him against Reeves. The Lakers are averaging 1.38 points per possession when Conley's defending. This feels like Conley's an X factor because this isn't a Mike Conley series to where we might look back and say the Wolves decided to kind of sacrifice their offensive decision-making or dynamism, and we're going to play like without him at stretches. Right. Like, nope, like Nas in there instead.
Yeah. Which like we've seen Na make a bunch of threes in a playoff series, and like that's there are ways like the Lakers could accomplish everything they want, force it out of Ant's hands. Conley's not on the floor, and still like Na or Naz Reid or whoever else is just good enough or is hot enough to make
Dante
that
DiVincenzo definitely.
You haven't even mentioned him yet. Like that's another guy. Again, Conley's so important to Minnesota though, because like he's just the only guy that I trust to make the right play under pressure.
Do you think, though, for something you already mentioned, the series is going to be so fascinating? If you're not going to be able to play Rudy as much because you think this is a bad matchup for him, that kind of diminish Mike Conley's offensive importance a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because then the extra space, I'm okay with if it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Dante DiVincenzo, or even I'm going to say it now and I'll probably eat these words. Like, I'm okay with Julius Randle, like having to make those decisions then if that's what your floor balance is going to be in the half court when Gobert is off the floor.
Yeah. Every single move in this series, this should just have been a 100% tactical discussion. Cause like you can't discuss one wrinkle without it leading into like three others, I hadn't thought about like, I mean, if you're the Lakers, are you happy that Well, yeah, I guess if you play Gobert off the floor, you almost kind of play Conley off the floor too. Like that's just so you get a 2-for-1 out of that. I don't know. I mean, certainly the
But don't
Wolves.
you isn't there part of you, if you're the Lakers, that maybe you don't want? I mean, you probably if you play Rudy Gobert off the floor, I get you count that as a W, but I'm also kind of like, but then you have to deal with the ramifications on the offensive end where the Wolves are going to be more spaced out.
Yeah, right. And then that maybe that gets Ant. Well, but then you're forcing it out of his hands. You definitely, if you're playing small, have to force the ball out of Edwards' hands. Like, the other thing we haven't talked about is like small ball might just be a necessity because I don't think Jackson Hayes is just flat out good enough to like deserve to play in this series. Like, what is he giving you that you absolutely need that you're sure he's going to give you?
Maybe some rebounding. That's and like going up against
Maybe.
Rudy and like Julius Randle, like
Yeah,
probably not.
right.
But it's yeah, it's small. Is just I love like Vando on defense is still a terror, but he just is so limiting on the offensive end. And if you put
Mhm.
Vando on the court, you're probably not playing Rudy Gobert off the floor in that instance either.
No,
So
yeah,
you're giving
exactly.
uh, man. This is so you're at, we had Mike Conley's an X factor for the Wolves. Who's your Lakers? I struggled every aspect of this series. I struggled with.
I know. I think I kind of talked about it a little bit. It could be Rui for the reasons I mentioned. Like he might be the guy you throw Gobert on if you're trying to keep him on the floor and hide him. But we haven't really. I'll use this as an avenue to talk about Finney Smith, because I do think defensively he's gonna have like a massive role.
Yeah.
He's just gonna have to. And then on the other end, he's also someone that he might be the guy that Gobert like sort of guards. Like his 3-point shooting might just you might be in a situation where several times in a row down the floor the Wolves are just like goading the Lakers into, all right, let's see if Finney Smith is hot tonight. And if he's not, then things change. Maybe small ball isn't going to be that effective. So I think both ends, Finney Smith, I think is going to be a pretty big factor.
I have him as my X factor as well. Was that well, he's definitely going to defend Ant, or are you going to put him? Are you going to put him at points on Jaden and have him try to help onto Ant or maybe Julius Randle? He'll spend time guarding Julius Randle. The 3-point shooting, like you mentioned, for variance sake, I Vanderbilt was also an option for me, and it could have been Rui, but like Vanderbilt, I'm kind of looking at where it's if the Lakers end up playing him a bunch, do you think that's like it's because it worked, or it's a bad
Oh,
omen because well, Ant is torching us, and it's we decided we needed to compromise the offense to get Vando looks against Ant, and that's why he just I don't know if he's going to play enough minutes, so that's why I didn't want to include him. But it's almost the kind of it's their Mike Conley, except Vando's not as important, nearly as
right.
important to what they do. But if you're playing Vando, you could talk me into saying, well, that's great for the Lakers that they were able to get away with Vando, or it's oh no, like things were going so
Yeah.
bad on defense that they
Like
needed to play Vando.
like if you had to go into a coma for 2 weeks and the only fact you knew after it was Jared Vanderbilt averaged 29 minutes a game in the series, like what does that mean? Like I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad. It could go either way. That's a great one. I like that.
Narratively speaking, will LeBron just what will his legacy look like if he's able to win this first round matchup? Will he
Where
be
does this
finally,
affect him in the GOAT rankings?
right? Will he finally surpass Kobe Bryant in the best NBA players of all time? I think my actual one is just are the Timberwolves better than the roller coaster that they've been? Because there's a bunch of different data points that say no, like this team is low key a shit show, and then there's a bunch of other data points that's like no, they're a contender. They
Yep.
have one of the best net ratings in the league against top 10 teams. The Lakers and the Thunder, ironically, are the only teams with higher winning percentages against Western Conference teams.
Mhm.
And just like you've seen them get up for these big games, and playoffs are big games, but they've also blown more fourth quarter leads than anyone else. They've underperformed their point differential longer than anyone else. And part of the belief in Minnesota is they really turned on the Jets in March. And if we know
Mhm.
anything about NBA basketball in March, Grant, it's that you should absolutely trust everything that comes after March 1st. So I think, and that can bleed into, well, what is the fallout if they lose? Because they're going to still be expensive. There's going to be new ownership will officially have taken over. Tim Connolly has that executives option. They have Nikhil Alexander Walker's a free agent. Naz Reid can be a free agent. Julius Randle can be a free agent. This is weird to say. I made the joke about LeBron's legacy, but this is perhaps the lowest stakes playoff series I think possible just for him or Luka because it's Luka's on a new team. It came midseason. He was injured. And then LeBron, it's yeah, okay, like this stuff still matters. He's good. He's going to be all NBA, but this is the first time a team is no longer on LeBron's timeline. So
Well,
it's kind
and
of
then
like,
I have so much to say. Just in response to that, like the Lakers got Luca, and somehow it's like you have a 40-year-old LeBron on your team, and it's like, we got time. Like that's just like how are we here? But that's just that's how it feels, right? It's like, well, they don't have to get it done this year because I mean Luca's here and LeBron can just, he's got 3 to 5 more years of just I can be second banana and we'll be contenders. Like that.
I hope, I know people like make a lot of jokes about LeBron. I would love to see him play to 45. I would love it.
Why wouldn't you if you like
It's
he's
aspirational, is what
yeah,
it is.
right, 100%. So there's that. The Wolves thing, to your point, before I get to my narrative, is like I don't know if you saw. I think it was Kevin Pelton does this, or maybe it's Dan Feldman on the Dunked On newsletter of like if you adjust teams' net rating based on like their best 5 guys or like who's actually going to play. Like they tweak the rotation stuff for guys that are going to play in the playoff rotation, and the Wolves are like the 4th best team in the league. So it's just like, okay, so their top end is amazing. But weirdly, I also like them because I think they have like 9 good players or like 10 good players that all should play. So I don't know what to do with that. I think that just speaks to the whole, like, we couldn't quit them all year. They're confounding. They can look as bad as imaginable. And other times it's like, oh, I believe that Anthony Edwards and a good defense is like all you need to succeed in the playoffs. Like that's just, so I don't, they're just like hard to pin down.
I think the best way to frame with them is they are equal parts a danger to everybody else and themselves.
Yeah. There's like a medical designation for that, I think. So my narrative thing is just I guess I keep kind of leaning toward on the narrative side stuff that I just personally want to see because it would be fun or exciting. And I'm viewing this as like potentially the first step in the official beginning of the Luka Doncic level up revenge tour, where like I can imagine I still all season have kind of been like, he still doesn't look quite like, not even like last year, Luka. I don't know that he's in like peak shape. I think maybe there's like the calf thing is still an issue. It just hasn't felt quite the same to me, but he just got traded to a new team. I feel like what I want is for that to be like a wake up call and we see like a maximally focused version of him. And then he just takes the Lakers on a deep run. And then we get to just enjoy the Schadenfreude for Dallas and Nico Harrison. Sorry, Dallas. I actually think Dallas might be rooting for that because I think most Mavs fans are bigger Luka fans than they are the team. That's what I'm hoping for. Just from like a pure, like, oh, this is a fun story standpoint of just Luka is the best he's ever looked. He's just undeniably great and dominates this series and then a couple more. That would be fun.
I think I'm kind of hoping for, and this will leak into predictions, we just look back on this, and at least for myself, I could say you really just overthought and twisted yourself into a pretzel over a team that has LeBron James and Luka Doncic on it.
Right. Yeah. And I say all that too, while acknowledging I actually don't enjoy the Luka Doncic viewing experience. Like I kind of like generally don't, to the extent I still do this, like root for him because I don't like the complaining. I don't like the feeling that he's like not committed off the court, all that stuff. Like I don't love heliocentric basketball. Like
the thing with me is I struggle with that. They hear like the peak James Harden stuff, and when it's born from, it's just I don't love watching it. Mm-hmm. But like this is just a whole Luka in the playoffs has always been appointment viewing though, and just
for sure.
And him and James Harden and like even Trae Young does this, like they make it digestible too because the passes that they throw are just like angles, like it just bends like defies the laws of physics basically. Right. So predictions.
I'm going Lakers in 7. I would be deeply disappointed if this isn't a long series that has like a ping ponging of like game to game lineup and rotation and tactical tweaks. I think it's close. Obviously, I'm picking it in 7, but ultimately, I think the Lakers are going to have an easier time scoring on a Wolves defense than the other way around. I just think there's more for the Lakers to do that force guys on the Wolves who shouldn't be in playmaking positions to have to be in those positions.
So I agree. I hope it goes 7 games, and I think it'll go 7 games. I'm going Wolves in 7, and I'm kind of doing the inverse of what you're doing, where it's I just think the Lakers are going to run out of dependable players long before the Wolves do. And so if shit goes sideways, and let's use the Rudy Gobert thing as an example, if the Lakers downsize, Rudy can't play those minutes. The Wolves they have options. And then if you're
Yeah.
the Lakers and you're not defending, like you start, how many players in the Lakers row do you just caps lock trust? And if it's more than 5, I call bullshit.
Yeah, it's basically 3. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess Finney Smith 3.5 because I believe he'll be a great defensive player. But yeah,
You can go
that's a good
4
point.
and just say like DFS or Rui, like one of them will always just be fine.
Yeah.
Our next series, the Boston Celtics versus the Orlando Magic. This one is your show, Grant. So what is the tactical problem you will be monitoring?
So there's like I'm sure if anyone that's read or paid attention to these two teams, it's just like the Magic don't let you get threes up and they don't switch and they force isolation stuff and they foul a lot. And the Celtics like to shoot threes, like to get, don't like to attack in isolation if they don't have to, like to get you in rotation, all this. So just like the sheer contrast in styles there, which I would boil down to really, will Orlando be like forced to do something other than switch all the time and like have Jason Tatum just going downhill against single cover? You know what I mean? Like, can Orlando either force that to be the case, or can Boston figure out ways to get Orlando to like send doubles and help on drives, which they don't want to do? Michael Pena had this: Orlando doubles or helps on drives less than any team in the league. So they just really want to see if some individual player can just beat them to the basket and make layups or get fouled or whatever. So the tactical thing for me is just which of those two teams bend first. Like, can Orlando get away with switching everything, accepting mismatches, and getting the Celtics to play in a way that, one, limits their 3-point attempts, because you're just going to try to do stuff other than shoot threes if you're in isolation situations. Other than Tatum, he might just shoot them anyway. You know what I mean? Like, can Orlando just make Boston do what it doesn't want to do and get it out of its heavy 3-point volume stuff? Because they've done it to most other teams this year defensively. Like, it has worked. The defense is very good. Boston's just, they shot 48 threes a game. They've shot more threes than anybody ever. So they've succeeded in generating those looks against all kinds of defenses. Can they do it against this one?
Mine was similar when it came to just sort of the math problem, because if you just look at how many 3-pointers per game each of these teams is making, in theory, like the Magic are just set up to be a minus 20 in that department every single game. And they don't have the talent. I mean, few teams do, but like they just absolutely don't have the offensive like consistency inside the arc in transition to beat out that. But this was the other note I made. So there's like a little difference here is if you can, the Celtics just, they don't always appear in as much as a rush as they should be. And when things bog down on the offensive end, doesn't it almost a lot of the times feel not on purpose, but just like it's self-sabotage? We're like, no, the other team's not slowing you down. Like you guys are kind of lollygagging these possessions. And if you do that against the Orlando Magic, you give them a chance for their defense to get set. You give them a chance to coax you into shots that maybe you don't want to take, or at least out of the shots that you would traditionally want to take. And so, and you also put them in a position where if their defense is going to get set, like they might create turnovers and you're going to give them free points there. Even without Jalen Suggs, this defense is just absolutely hellacious. And so that would just be something to watch, because if you're Boston, the goal should be, especially with Jaylen Brown having that knee injection, and he missed 9 of their final 25 or 26 games. You should absolutely want to make this as quick of a series as possible. And I'm just kind of wondering, are you going to fall into where there's just going to be like a couple of trap games here? It's all like Boston didn't play with enough urgency on the offensive end. And so we just know with what Orlando could do, one, if they have a chance to bring you sort of down to their level and turn this into a rock fight, is Boston set up to beat that? I still think stylistically, Boston will prevail there, but there's enough unease to where I don't think Boston's just margin for doing whatever they do on offense and going through the motions. They might still win the series then, but they will absolutely feel it.
Yeah, right. I think we focus on that end of the floor, and then I think you're right that they'll feel it if they don't. Just they need to treat this like we got to get in and get out, because we got bigger fish to fry. But how do you this this is unfair because I didn't really look at this much either, and it may just be a short answer. Like, even if Orlando makes it hard on Boston, makes it hard for Boston to score, like, how's Orlando scoring in this series? Like, how are they going to, because you mentioned like there's kind of like a -20 like
Well,
starting point. Like, how are they making that up?
well, that I think that kind of steps on the toes of my narrative question. By the way, so you're saying get out of this series, and I was thinking as you said that, I was like, yeah, like a Kevin Durant tenure with a team outside of Oklahoma, just get there and get out. But my narrative for this, I'm just going to go into because it's
Sure.
kind of tactical. But is this like they might lose? But could this be the series where it finally becomes consensus that Paolo Banchero's just that dude? Look at what
Mm,
he did in the playoffs last year. Look at his moments in the play-in. We all know how important playing games are. If he like kind of does it against Boston's, like Boston has a lot of defensive options they could throw at him, but for all Franz Wagner has done and a lot of what the on-off splits show, and I mean even Orlando, I think they become too reliant, or not too reliant, but yeah, too reliant. They let themselves get into the half court too much when Paolo Banchero's on the floor, and it's like, run, damn it! Like he can do
mhm.
that too. Like he just might, like we've seen him in a lot of big game, not a lot, but like a handful of big games now just go off.
Yeah.
And if you do that against Boston, even if your team loses, it's kind of good for the sense in Orlando where it's okay. Not that you need to end the debate, is it Franz or Paolo, but it does seem like, doesn't it seem like there's more skepticism over the ceiling of Paolo Banchero than there is of Franz Wagner? And I don't know, when you look at where Franz Wagner has kind of regressed as a
Yeah.
perimeter shooter, I don't understand that element of it.
Yeah, I also don't share, I don't think you do either. Like, I think we're both higher on Paolo than Franz, even though
It's not,
Franz.
there's not even a debate
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
like, it's just not even a debate for me.
So I really tried to think like from Boston's perspective. This is my like rejected narrative of, is just like, might there be something Orlando does that provides a blueprint, for better teams to try to execute against the Celtics after the Celtics beat Orlando? Like, because
So not
like,
the
is
Knicks
the
is what you're saying, the team after
right,
the Knicks, right? Yeah.
right after the Knicks. Like, is there something? But I rejected that one. Mine is like kind of tied to yours because I do think there's a good chance that Paolo does just go off and we leave the series thinking like, man, that guy's it. Like, okay, like what this great defense plus Paolo, why is this so hard? And that's what I'm going to get into is like, if the result is Banchero is like, looks like a guy that is an alpha A1 postseason scorer, which I kind of think he is.
Yeah.
And you get just boat raced anyway. Can we please finally have the Magic just embrace the fact that we need more offensive finishers and creators? Like, will this finally be the thing that makes the Magic build a roster around Banchero that like isn't so one-sided? Like, can we get it's a version of the same thing we've been talking about for like 3 years now, basically. Like, just what else do you need to see? Like, great defense, awesome first option, like pretty good second, really, in Franz if he could shoot it. And then like you still get smoked. Okay, so now let's have the conversation. Like, what do we got to do? Let's like really commit to finding the types of supporting players that can maximize like some real, like legitimate, hard to create
Yep.
strengths that Orlando already has. That's what I would be, because Orlando's going to lose this series. It's a question of how quickly it goes. So it just that conversation should have been happening a long time ago. But like, will this just force it?
I do think we should. That's a great one, by the way, and they'll probably look at it and
Right.
say like, "Oh, we didn't have Mo Wagner or Jalen
Yeah.
Suggs, so the offense might be okay."
I'm trying to speak it into existence because I want it to happen.
I think the other thing that I did mention at the top is Jalen Brown okay? Is this a series
Mhm.
where it's, do you just, if you're Boston, aren't you a little bit tempted to just be like, do we even need to play him? Like, let's just
My
give him.
my bold prediction for this series is he will play fewer than 100 minutes, and it'll be because
Ooh,
Boston's like, we don't need him. We're
because
looking ahead.
you look at it and it's like, even over the past quarter of the season, like his field goal percentage on drives is up. The volume is like around the same of where it's been all year. The 3-point shooting for him has been a problem. Does that
Mhm.
speak to like, okay, he's been dealing with leg issues for months, knee issues for months. That could speak to something about lift, but then, oh, he's like finishing on drives. Is that more about the spacing? And he hasn't looked, I guess he's like, defenses have tried to, or do like some weird things with him, but I don't, against the Magic, like, is this even the series that you want to try and
Right.
push his limits there? And you
Yeah.
want him to be okay because he is your second most important player. So that's just something to kind of monitor. And I don't know if this belongs here. I think you and I are pretty much in agreement. And maybe the stuff with ownership changes this, and just the sheer expense of the second apron plus the functional limitations of it on the transaction market, it feels a year too early to be like, does this dictate, and or at least it feels a series too early to even ask this question of, will this dictate? Because I guess if they lose, then it's okay, what's going to happen over the offseason? But I think it deserves an honorable mention just because second apron life is tricky.
This feels like a further down the road conversation, but the result could change that. Like the Celtics are like really kind of trailblazing right now, or they're about to be, because like the other teams that have gotten prohibitively, like Phoenix is just like, well, that was just dumb. And like, of course they should not have been there and should tear it down. But like Boston's the real test, right? Of like this team, if they win a title, it's like, yeah, of course they did. Like no one's surprised if Boston wins it again. And it's like, okay, so a team that good are you still going to break that team down because you're worried about the back half of this decade? You know what I mean? Like eventually that will be like one of the 2 or 3 biggest talking points of whatever season or off season, like things start to rumble. Maybe not yet. Who's your X factor though? Did you say Jaylen Brown?
For Boston, I kind of just have Peyton Pritchard because I didn't know. I thought Drew Holiday, will his 3-pointers go in? I think is a big one, especially if Boston isn't able to take as many of them. And by the way, the number I didn't have out here, the Celtics were 18th in points scored per possession against the Magic this year. And if Jaylen Brown's not right, that's something to keep an eye on. So I think Drew Holiday, but also just Peyton Pritchard has had a fantastic year. But in my head, I'm just like, if Cole Anthony's not on the floor, this is just, and even if he is, like this much might not be the Peyton Pritchard series. However, if you can't play Jaylen Brown as many minutes, like, do you want, like, are we talking about like more Sam Hauser here in that scenario? I don't like, so I think both of those guys would be who I settle on. And then for the Magic, I already mentioned him. It's Cole Anthony, who had a very nice playing game for them, but just, he is the only other player on this team aside from Paolo. Franz doesn't even sit here, that ranks as an above average half court shot maker and creator this season, like 50th percentile or better. There's 2 players on this Magic team that are in the rotation right now that rank inside both of those. That would be Cole Anthony and Paolo Banchero. And so you're going to need Cole Anthony to just cook. Like that's probably problematic, but he's my X factor for Orlando.
Exactly the same. I had Cole Anthony for Orlando. All the reasons you said. Just like can someone else please contribute? Like it's got to be him, I think. And it's like what are the odds that he does? It's a coin flip at best.
If it's not him, if it needs to be Anthony Black, who looks a little bit more at home on offense, but my God, if that's
so. And then for the Celtics, this is still like once I got the whole like tactical interplay of like how Orlando wants to switch and just try to get you to play one-on-one. It just like, oh, it's Porzingis. Because that's always been Boston's postseason trump card, is just like, cool, you switched like someone who's not 7 feet tall onto Porzingis mid post, he gets fouled. Like that's just, and rinse repeat. So it's him. I do think Orlando is like whether it's Black, who's just great defensive length, or Franz or Paolo, like you'll be able maybe to engineer it so you're switching like fairly capable size onto him.
Underrated part of Paolo's game that you can do that with Paolo. Yeah.
Super strong. Like we'll get under Porzingis. It won't be moved. So Porzingis will just have to be like a total foul drawing technician or like be really patient shooting over those guys. But I think that is the switch buster that Boston employs against defenses that like to do that. So I think it's just got to be, honestly, like I don't think they're going to need him to be that great. I just think Orlando's offense is so like non-threatening outside of Paolo that's like, lots of things could go wrong for Boston.
We might have already tipped our hands here, but what are you predicting for this series?
I'm going to give Orlando 1 game. I think I didn't predict any sweeps. I'll go Celtics in 5.
I want Celtics in 5 too. I think it says about both those teams where the Magic are scrappy as hell. And also just Boston just feels fated to give away a game for some. There'll be variance with the 3-point shooting, or the offense just doesn't click or struggles against Orlando. So yeah, Celtics in 5. Grant's Super Bowl series, the Rockets versus the Warriors. And it's fun because now I get to dictate how we start the tactical matchup on this one. This is probably would have been the way I should have framed it when we were talking Timberwolves Lakers. Who concedes more in this matchup? Because I'm looking at it as the Rockets are a unique meld of physical and athletic, which feel like the two things that Golden State is like not necessarily built to go up against all that well. But you look at Golden State, they are far more dynamic overall, especially when you get to like the offensive end. And so what I'm sort of wondering is, we know how important Amen Thompson's going to be to defending Steph Curry. But like, how do you, if you're Houston, I'm so curious to see how Ime Udoka goes about. And I actually already asked you about this a couple days ago, but I'm so curious to see how he goes about sort of defending the rest of the Warriors, because I asked you if you think that the Warriors are a good or a bad matchup for the Steven Adams, Alperen Şengün front court that we've seen more of since like over the past like 2 months or whatever is when they logged like 90% of their minutes. They're destroying teams during that time. And I think it's easy just to say that's not going to work in a playoff series. But, and I know Jimmy Butler went off in the playing game, the Grizzlies kind of like stuck Zach Edey on him, and I didn't hate it all the time. And with like Ime Udoka is so good at having his players cross match. We saw it in Boston with Robert Williams. We've seen it this year with Şengün and Adams. I'm just kind of wondering, if you know you're not going to have the same level of half court versatility that Golden State does, and if there are going to be maybe enough questionable shooters on the court for Golden State, Jimmy Butler being one of them, although playoff Jimmy, different beast, of course, something to consider here, because Golden State can't even begin to compete with that size. And so if you give that unit any quarter, and I guess even if you don't, it's like, well, Houston could play Jabari Smith Jr. at the 5, and they're still not going to necessarily be small. So I'm very curious to see what type of look Ime Udoka ends up favoring in this series, because I do think that the Rockets, maybe there's no in between, but I could see them being like a real foil for Golden State's lack of size, and I would even say overall athleticism.
Yeah, I think that's. I think to answer that, I thought about that a little more. Isn't it weird that like we've in this discussion of other series, or maybe I was going to say we have focused on like, well, how does the team with the conventional big guy avoid, getting spaced out and just attacked? And it's like somehow when the Rockets have not just one but two of those guys, like we're more concerned. Like shouldn't it be like even harder for the Rockets to survive that way against a smart team?
Quick number there. They're grabbing 80.5% of defensive rebounds with those from the court. Do you know what their offensive rebounding rate is?
100? I don't know.
49.7.
Yeah. So you're getting second chance opportunities half the time.
And at that point, it's like, so maybe you're conceding a lot on defense, but if you're scoring enough to where you let that lineup get its defense set, and like if you, not that you don't have to worry about Steph Curry if Amen Thompson's on the floor, but like if you're just like, well, we have the guy who's going to go after Steph.
Right.
Like, I hope they at least try it, because I just want to see, I'm so curious to see what happens. And they did try it against Golden State this season, but you know how the regular season works.
Yeah. Well, I would say though, I think Şengün and Adams together like probably will work if Curry's off the floor. I think like, because then the Warriors just don't have enough advantage. Like they can't really take advantage of it the same way. Like it just, then I think Houston comes out ahead on all the second chance stuff and all the just defensive length and size. And like, who are you freaked out about springing open from 3 that one of those guys can't get out to cut? Like you Buddy Hield? Like, I don't think so. I think the Rockets will live with that. If Curry's on the floor, I think you're kind of playing with fire. It might still work for small stretches, but I would be reluctant if I'm Udoka to try that with Curry running around. Maybe it'll still work. I don't know. So my tactical, I kind of went with one on each side, because this is such a rich series. This is like the Lakers, Minnesota all over again. There's so many like trickle down things. The big picture one though is, how are the Rockets going to consistently score in the half court? I just, all of the guys that give the Warriors so many problems, like your Brookses and certainly your Thompsons, like they're not players you're concerned about offensively so much, or at least they're even Van Vliet, or at least they're guys that it's like, we kind of know how to contain them or force them into positions or into situations that they're not like going to excel at. Like that's, and so then it just becomes like, is Jalen Green going to have a series? Is Şengün, are they going to engineer switches as often as possible so Şengün has someone other than Draymond guarding him, and then you dump it in and you have a pretty good chance at like a good shot or something that way? How do the Warriors counter that? So Houston's ability to score in the half court is like, that's been an issue all season. It's been an issue late in games. How do the Rockets figure that out? The other side, it's I'm going to step on my X factor, but it's like, how do we not? Can Amen Thompson do what he did to Steph Curry in their last regular season meeting, which is just never lose track of him, force more turnovers than field goals? Like, can he take him out? Like, is that actually possible in a playoff series? I think it's possible in a game. We saw it, but with the Warriors having a chance to look at that, with game to game adjustments, with probably some attention paid by Golden State to making it harder for Thompson to be offensively valuable. Like, can we make him into a shooter? Can we force Houston to, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be ways to make the Rockets have to try to think about how much we can keep him on the floor. But really, it's just, I can't remember the last guy that gave Curry that much of a hard time. And I think I had him, I think, third on my defensive player of the year ballot. He's just a different level.
Just off that one game. You watch it.
Yeah, that was it. That's all it took. He's just a different level of athlete. It's like, I don't know if you've seen this, like, oh, the Tony Allen comparison. It's like, well, the Warriors figured out how to hack the Tony Allen problem and they beat Memphis when Allen was, great. It's like, Thompson is not Tony Allen. Like, Thompson will put it on the floor, make a pass, dunk over everybody. Like, this is not a specialist in the real sense of the word. So I miss me with the he's Tony Allen thing and not a problem. Like, he's a huge problem. He's the biggest problem the Warriors have seen as a Curry defender, maybe ever. I don't know. There's probably somebody I'm forgetting, but like, that's the series. If he can contain Curry, I think the Rockets win the series, because the Warriors, even with Butler, don't have enough to like consistently score. If Curry figures it out, or if Kerr figures it out, then I think the Warriors probably win fairly easily.
What do you have any idea what figuring out would look like, or steps to take to figure? Like, is it just, well, there needs to be more Jimmy Butler, like Steph Curry, screening for each other? Does that do it at all, or is it just?
I think there's a couple ways it happens. One is they sort of accept Curry being taken out of the action to some extent, and Butler capitalizes on advantages enough to where you have to sort of relax some of the Thompson stuff and allow him to play like more standard defense, as opposed to just like, I am physically glued to this one person. Like, generally that's really hard to pull off. That's one way it could happen, where it's a Butler series and he dominates it, and maybe it doesn't matter that Curry, has one or two good games. The other way is just like, it's going to have to be really good screen setting and back cutting and like that kind of stuff, which the Warriors, they've won a lot of series that way. It just can't be Curry running in circles trying to get open on the perimeter. It's going to have to be, he's going to have to make layups. He's going to have to be a screener, and Thompson won't ever leave him. So somebody else is like, Curry can win the series without scoring a ton potentially, but like, it's going to be hard. I really like, I don't think we can overstate how good Thompson might be in this series.
Do you think that the Houston's just going to like identically, because we figure what, Steph will play like 38 minutes a game. You think Amen Thompson's going to be on the floor for every single one of those?
I mean, I would if I'm the Rockets, because like, you could use Brooks. Van Fleet actually is pretty good, but the size, you can screen him. He's smaller. Like, you can, if you do get switches, like we'll go at him. If you get Thompson to switch off of him, it's like, all right, so where's the advantage there? I think you want Thompson out there every second Curry is.
Narratives. What's your narrative for this?
It's like the broader, well, it's colored by like, these two franchises have had like some highly contentious playoff series. The Rockets were very.
Will there be any appeals filed?
Will Raphael Stone like find the same agency that compiled all the fouls that were not called, like Daryl Morey did, and submitted to? There's some of that stuff. There's, the Rockets are all different from those Harden teams, but not that Draymond and Şengün are like best buds. So I think, and like the last game was, pretty contentious. It's just the youth, length, skill, athleticism versus just the old dudes that know how to play and have figured out like seemingly unsolvable challenges in the past. Like, I think it's really that for me is the narrative angle, the contrast between these two teams, and the feeling that like Houston could just like be so physically overwhelming that they're finally the team that like the Warriors just can't outthink. And then if the Warriors do outthink a team this young and athletic, like that's fun too.
So mine is even more broader strokes, especially because there was the report that because the Rockets finished second in the West, they were even less likely to pursue a Kevin Durant or Devin Booker trade. I want to know, shouldn't you wait and see how you fare in the playoffs before you take that stance? And I think these situations are fluid, and I probably still wouldn't unless the cost to get Kevin Durant specifically falls through the floor. I don't want to bring in someone who's Kevin Durant. Like, he's a perfect fit, but I don't want to give up a ton of equity for someone for just the next 2 years or whatever it is. But like, when you're looking at Devin Booker, it's not even Devin Booker. It's if you lose this offensive series, the way that the Magic we've seen lost in the playoffs last year, kind of how you struggled to create in the half court, you better be open to making a bigger swing on the trade market. I know that you can, as a Rockets fan, you can look at this, and I'm not even insulting them and say we have all the time in the world. Like, time is on our side. That's true to an extent, but windows open and close so quickly around the NBA, and you've already paid Şengün and Jalen Green. Those deals kick in next year. Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason are extension eligible this summer. Amen Thompson is going to be and Cam Whitmore is going to be extension eligible next summer. Like, the reinvestments are coming fast and furious here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying to overreact. And there's a chance if you're not going to make a big move, it better be because you plan on just like unwrapping Reed Shepherd next year because you believe he's everything you need. And he might be. We all know, anyone who listens here knows how I feel about Reed Shepherd. But like, if they do lose, I'm wondering in what manner would it take for them to take a longer look at their roster and say, we know what we need. And I would argue that they'll try to make some upgrade, but what's the level of upgrade and how aggressive will they be in going about it? And it has to happen on the trade market. You're not just going to use the mid-level and find someone who solves everything.
Right. I agree that like Durant shouldn't be the guy. Because
like if the Suns are like, just give us back this year's first round pick or something, fuck it, have it. Like, we'll make the money work with Fred VanVleet and Phil. Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I mean, that's it. Like, he shouldn't be the guy. But then the question is like, so you're just the second seed in a really tough West. Like, what are you waiting for? Isn't it go time now? Like, right? The way you said, windows open and close. Like, how much better do you need to be to take an extreme win now swing? That feels short-sighted. And I'm saying that acknowledging Durant's not, I don't love it if it's Durant, but it's like, I don't know, you're pretty close to like that being maybe the right choice. I think if Houston loses in the way that most people would expect it to lose, which is you can't score, then like, I was thinking Orlando before you said it. It's like, don't be Orlando about this. Like, if you lose because you can't score and you don't go out and make the move that brings in someone that will change that, you're wasting a year. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it
doesn't to me, because that was going to be the question. It doesn't, if you lose in 4 or 5, it's sort of like a smack in the face. I don't care if it's 6 or 7. If you lose and we look back and say they lost in 7, it was close in game 7, they just didn't have enough offense to get them over the hump. Go out and get the fucking offense.
Right. Yeah. They're as positioned as any team to do it. Like it's not an asset question. It's not it would be like, that is why they will lose. If they lose, it will be because they can't score. It's not going to be because the defense falls apart. So it's like, we already know this. You get one of these, you get one postseason to validate what everybody thinks is your problem as being, it is your problem. If you do it again, then it's like unforgivable. We're yelling at the 2026 offseason Rockets right now already.
Right, and I'm just saying, anything, we have to see the playoffs first. And even though they're saying one thing now, that could change over the summer, but it's something to think about because the happy to be here vibes, they end after you've left. Like, it's okay. You get this found money playoff run, but you don't get another one, especially in today's NBA. No, you don't get that.
No, forget it. X Factor, I mentioned Amen Thompson. That's fairly obvious. On the Warriors side, I think it's just Moody and Podziemski because
Kuminga's not going to play, so
because Kuminga's not playing. You know what? I had a Kuminga revelation, Dan. I figured it out. I figured out why it's okay that he's not playing and why it's justifiable. Because if I am anything, it is a Steve Kerr apologist, and he's right no matter what he does. So if I asked you, okay, you're mad, right? You're going to be mad that Kuminga's not playing. And if I said, Dan, guarantee me the thing that Kuminga's going to bring tonight. Like, what are you guaranteeing me he's going to do for you in the rotation tonight? And you don't have an answer.
Yeah,
right?
I did not pass the ball enough.
So that's what like crystallized it for me. It's like, can you believe Guy Santos is playing over this guy? Gary Payton II can't shoot either, although sometimes he can. He's playing over him. Like Moody keeps playing over him. The thing is, like with Guy Santos, you could have answered the guarantee question with like, he's going to play insanely hard and be in the right place on defense and go after the boards. Kuminga does that sometimes. Sometimes he doesn't. Like, so like even the role player shit, you can't guarantee. You certainly can't guarantee like efficient offense. You certainly can't guarantee good passing. You certainly can't guarantee, you know what I mean? Like you go down the list. I think that's what it is. That's all it is like Kerr needs someone that when he puts him in the game, he can say, I know I'm getting this. Like even if it's just from an effort and like be in the right spot thing. And Kuminga has no guarantees whatsoever. And we're at the point in their season where he's like, I can't like chance it, you know, that's what it just, I get it now. I understand why he's not playing him.
It only took the better part of 4 years, but you got it.
I finally cracked it. It's just Moody and Podziemski making threes. Like if those two guys aren't making threes, then I think the Rockets could make a short series of this.
I have Podziemski, but in part because Kuminga really won't play well enough. And if he does, then I think he just becomes it because how do those minutes go if they're shoehorning him in the lineup? But I think I don't expect this to be the scenario, but if Steph struggles against Ahmed Thompson, and I know how we all feel about playoff Jimmy, but if he has games or just a game or quarters to where like him breaking down the Rockets defense of all defenses isn't working, who's the third guy you pivot to in that instance? It probably needs to be Podziemski. Am I right? Yeah. I guess it could be Kuminga in that instance then. So, I
mean, you've hit emergency status and you're breaking the glass. I think if you need Kuminga to come in and like create
Post is the real.
How do we not mention Quinn Post? He's going to break the two big lineup. That's what it is.
It's interesting. We've definitely like gone different routes with some of the X factors. So mine is smaller time for the Rockets for sure. I just have Steven Adams because I want to know, can they get away with that lineup? Again, it's only been used in small doses, but like winning small burst sample sizes in the playoffs can help you win entire series. So I have him just to see how many minutes can they get away with that. And I think if it's not going to be him, I might pick Jabari Smith Jr. because I kind of view him as just when you're looking at their bigs, he feels more in line with the way that the Warriors would play. And so if it's the Rockets that need to be the ones adapting, I think Jabari Smith just becomes, you make case for Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason. You make case for like so many different Rockets players.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Smith because I was trying to think about this series and the two big stuff, and it was like if they just put Smith out there, like who's the Warriors guy you're like worried about him having to guard? You know, like he could short circuit so much potentially. Like I think it's probably a good sign if the Rockets have to like play Jabari Smith as like the lone big or a lot, but there are scenarios where Smith is like a real problem or like he really does make it difficult. So the Rockets are good, man.
I will say if Steve Kerr does like take the bubble wrap off of Jonathan Kuminga, I'm absolutely throwing the Şengün and Adams duo on the court during that stint. I don't care if Steph is on the floor at that point.
That's the thing. That's like a green light. You might as well try it. Who are you picking in this series? I want you to go first.
I'm gonna go with the Rockets losing in 7. You like what I did there? You're ready to be irate.
I wish we had a heart rate monitor on me. It was a real roller coaster.
7. I could see this being the series that I'm most wrong about in the sense that if you told me the Rockets 1 in 5, you told me Golden State sweat. You can talk me into any outcome of this series. I think
I feel the same way. So I went Rockets losing in 6. Because it's just like if it gets to 7, the Warriors are old. They're going to be even more tired. And it's insane to bet against Steph in a game 7, but it'd be in Houston. Like, I just think in some ways, the longer this series goes, the worse of a sign it is for Golden State. So I'm going in 6. They'll be at home to try to win that game. And 2, like, I think if they're going to solve Houston, it's just going to have to happen before they get worn down and tired. That's like a big thing of it. So I feel like I've said this for almost every series outside of like Boston, Orlando. and maybe Knicks Pistons, like I don't feel great about this prediction at all. Like
Yeah.
you like you said, Houston could win this in 5, and it could the way it happens could be like, yeah, of course that's how it went. You know,
I'm pretty sure as of right, except for the 8 versus 1s in either conference, the only other series I would bet the money line on if I was a bettor would be Magic Celtics. I don't feel comfortable enough to I feel
right?
reasonably comfortable about the Knicks one, but like Bucks Pacers, like Wolves Lakers. I mean, Wolves Lakers and Rockets Warriors, those have been journeys
Yeah,
trying to speak through them.
that's by far to me. Those are the 2 most exciting series. I think it's just like, well, no, there's all 3, like Nuggets Clippers. Like, what are we talking about? There's all
Bucks,
3 of those.
I'm like fascinated by Bucks Pacers because
Right.
I picked the Pacers so easily. It's like I don't feel great about it.
Well, because you're just picking against Giannis and
Yeah,
against a really favorable matchup. Like,
but I'm also picking against Doc Rivers, which just seems like the way to. But it's not the second round, so maybe that's weird. I don't know.
no, I still think it's like a pretty good way to go.
These will be quicker because we're recording it before the second playing games take place. But we will be sure to do deeper dives, and when we do our playoff observations at some point in the next week, well, maybe we'll try and spend some more time on these series insofar as they warrant it. We should begin with Cleveland versus it will be Miami or Atlanta. What what do you want to start with? Let's start tactically and try and break it down for both sides. What tactically Hawks, Miami versus Cleveland would fascinate you?
I think I'm going to assume it's Miami, and just start there. I think just how do you cobble together a defense that like can even stay in the game tactically against this offense that's like, did you know this, like in terms of not like era adjusted or whatever, but in terms of offensive rating, the Cavs offense this year was like 10 points better than per 100 than like anything they posted with LeBron. Like it was just, it's a different era, but that's just like, so because you've
In
got Tyler Hero
conclusion,
to go at.
that's why Bob Cousy is better than LeBron James.
That's yeah. Well, I mean, no argument here, unless the Lakers beat the Wolves, and then we have to reevaluate his legacy. Because like Bam can only do so much, and I just that like I don't have anything specific because it's just like Miami's a good defensive team, but it's just like it doesn't seem equipped to like hang at all. So I don't know how that's going to happen other than Bam somehow guards 3 guys at once.
Yeah, and I mean, Bam versus Mobley would be just one of my favorite matchups of the playoffs, just to see how that unfolds. I actually think so. My tactical thing, this bodes well because it's really not going to be the same when we get to Thunder versus the Mavericks or the Grizzlies. I think it's the same for Cleveland. Like I would be so curious is if you're going to go into a drop, like is there a scenario or a reality, a universe, whatever, where Tyler Hero or Trae Young just make you pay so much that then you need to prioritize like, all right, well, Strus can't be in here. This needs to be a DeAndre Hunter series. And if it's not like if you don't believe it's DeAndre Hunter, it's okay. Like Isaac Okoro, like that's someone who could, if you want to put pressure on Tyler Hero or Trae Young, the two, like, yeah, Isaac Okoro is great. We have seen on a couple of occasions now getting away with him on all this team. This Cavs team is different. It's better. I get it. Getting away with him on the floor offensively, you don't want to do anything to hamstring what is a better offense than LeBron James ever piloted, apparently, as you said. So if there's going to be a hang up for Cleveland, I think it would be that because I don't know which player you would worry about more in that situation as Cleveland. I think I default to Trae just because of the passing, but Tyler Hero, I know he's had some, just sort of pits of inefficiency this year, especially later in the season, but like he's been pretty killer against some of those coverages.
Well, I mean, against like Vucevic and the Bulls in the play-in, it's just like Hero's just going to eat. Like that's if you have to. That's a really good one. I think.
How many years worth of evidence do we have of doing that in the play versus the Bulls?
Not enough. The Bulls need to see more. They're not convinced yet. I think. Would you expect the Cavs to drop? Like I think just like I don't know. I'll switch Mobley onto Hero, and I'm okay with that.
Against Miami. Do you think that? Well, I guess because Jalen Johnson.
I don't know. I mean, because you're right. Like that is one of the only ways I can see either of those teams being threatening is if you just sort of like dare Trae or Hero to just walk into shots.
Or maybe I'm wrong. Will it get harder to do that versus Miami? Because wouldn't you want you're gonna want Mobley involved on like Bam, and if Bam's not necessarily involved in that action, okay, well then what is your plan there?
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I don't know. Well, now I would just be curious how they handle that. Like, again, it's a little bit like, well, Cleveland can kind of mess around if it wants to and still win that series.
I'm
But
just trying to think of a way
yeah,
where it
it's
would be,
hard.
okay, hey, what happens here that could be a potential foil for Cleveland? I think Miami poses a more interesting matchup to me just because I think that Bam versus Evan Mobley would be,
Yeah,
and like
I
just kind
agree.
of the Heat's defense. Like they could put some pressure on Cleveland's guards for sure.
Yeah. And Atlanta's missing. I mean, like, no Jalen Johnson. Like, there's just, I mean, Dyson Daniels would be, I don't know, it'd be fun to watch him guard Garland or Mitchell, I guess, but it's like the other one's still going to get loose. So what's,
Exists. The
yeah.
other one exists.
What do you think the narrative is?
Oh,
These are always
oh,
hard.
the narrative's the same too. I think this is a perfect series that we don't need to know the opponent. Has the Evan Mobley arrival extended to the playoffs? Because
Okay.
that's what we've, and I don't know, Atlanta's probably not going to be like the best barometer for that, I would guess.
But Miami kind of would,
Right. And it's just, we've seen now it's happened where it's just he doesn't look as good in the playoffs, but this is a different, tripled his 3-point volume while shooting it at a good clip again, just better at putting the ball on the floor, getting through traffic, finishing through contact, making decisions out of there. I firmly believe that the arrival is for real, but if you go through another, like even if they win and you come out of it thinking like Evan Mobley on offense, like, he didn't look too good. Well, then like, all right, what's going to happen in these later rounds when you go up against, if it's Indiana or even if it's Milwaukee, and then if you face Boston in the conference finals, that gets really intriguing. So I think narratively, as my most improved player pick and my defensive player of the year pick, and as a member of my first team All NBA ballot, I don't really have doubts that he'll be fine, but it's something to monitor because that was one of the knocks against him coming into this year.
Yeah, I think that's right. The only other one I would have is just like, and again, I don't know if you're gonna get the sort of confirmation or otherwise in this particular series, but like, is DeAndre Hunter just like, yes, he's the fifth guy. Like he's perfect. We don't need to. Oh, is it gonna have to be a Coro? Is it gonna have to be Dean Wade? Is it gonna have to be Street? Like, just like no, on both ends. Like that's the guy. I think the answer is yes, probably. But even though I love Dean Wade defensively, but maybe you get some information on that, and that becomes a narrative.
Cleveland team's so fucking deep, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
X factors for me. So I'm going to say Isaac Okoro for Cleveland regardless, because I do think that they might want to pull that lever at some point defensively. So like, how much can he play there? And then if it's Atlanta, I'm going to say their X factor. Honestly, I'm going to say it's Zachary Risachet, because I think that they haven't played him in a ton of high leverage moments this like season. Like we saw more of it, like when he came back from his adductor injury, excuse me. But like against Cleveland, like when you have Garland and like, who would be okay? Dyson Daniels, great. What do you want to do after that? Like Risachet might, like, no DeAndre Hunter there anymore. Like you do have like Vic Krejci. Like, is that moving the needle for like what do you want to do? No, I love Vic Krejci. I'm just saying, like, how do you want to structure? Like he becomes super important. I would say defensively, also offensively, you want him hitting his threes. You want him stress testing defenses by moving without the ball. For Miami, I don't know that I have a good one. Like, is it Khalil Ware?
I mean, if you can't pick Hero, I think, I mean, Hero's not the Heat's best player. I feel like it's his Hero.
Tyler Hero's pull-up jumper. Is that
yeah, right. Specifically, like, and only if the Cavs play drop. Otherwise,
well, actually, maybe is it Wiggins then at that point? Because what if the Cavs don't play? What if they're like, then Wiggins becomes important? Like if Tyler Hero's able to kill drop zone, whatever. Okay, fine. But if that's not what you're facing, then Andrew Wiggins probably becomes pretty important to busting that.
Yeah, Wiggins is actually, I think you've talked me into Wiggins, because like you could imagine him. I mean, like he probably is the best guy to throw on either Garland or Mitchell. Like if you're trying to take one of them out, and then like he could survive on Mobley. I mean, you don't want Bam to do most of that, but maybe Bam's just got to like wrestle with Jared Allen. I don't know. So yeah, Wiggins is a good pick there. Plus, like, who knows what you're getting from that guy? Like, he can look like the
second best player on a title team, or the second best player on the Wizards. Like,
right. You never know, but we got a pretty broad spectrum there. If it's the Hawks, I think I'd probably just go Daniels, because maybe he's disruptive enough to make Cleveland's offense like seem mortal, like maybe he generates enough turnovers. Maybe he harasses Mitchell or Garland enough to where they're just like kind of a non-factor for a game or a half or something. Like it's tough sledding against this Cleveland offense, and he's kind of the guy that like might mess it up, but like we're kind of reaching here.
Predictions, I will go Cleveland in 4 over Atlanta. I was going to go Cleveland in 5 for Miami. Like, I could see them having like a lead late in the game, but then they'll just blow it. So I'm going to go Cleveland in 4 over Miami as well.
I think I'll just go Cleveland in 5 either way. Just, sweeps are, that means I just guaranteed a sweep. But
do you know what interests me about the Cavs is that this has been proven. Your rotation shortened in the playoffs, and it feels like the Grizzlies are kind of the perfect encapsulation of this, where it's the depth that can make them so effective until they implode during the regular season. It just doesn't carry over in the same way to the postseason. But I look at Cleveland's depth, and I've called it functional depth. What I've decided means, no, this translates to the playoffs. And it's just when you're trying to figure out, okay, they're top 4 guys, all playoff players, even if you have to close with Mobley at the 5, like that's fine. But like what? DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, Dean Wade, Ty Jerome, even Isaac Okoro. Like those are all, I'd be worried about Isaac Okoro staying on the floor and maybe Jerome in certain matches. Like this is like their entire rotation basically can stick in the playoffs. And so I think that it'll be a sweep for if you had to say that one of the teams is going to win a game, I'll say Miami, but I don't think either of these teams gets a game off this version of the Cavs.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm just gentleman sweeping it because I don't know why not. Cavs might relax.
Our final series, Oklahoma City versus Nico Harrison's Mavericks or Zach Kleiman's Grizzlies. What is your? Did I start tactically?
Yeah, I'll take tactical. So these are going to be kind of. Well, I guess we shouldn't really I don't know. I think I view Memphis as like markedly better than Dallas in a way that maybe you don't. I don't know. I just, even though that feels ridiculous because the wheels are falling off in a lot of ways in Memphis. I think tactically it just has to be the Jalen, like it's not going to be an issue in this series. Sorry, but like the Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, or Jalen Williams, Isaiah Hartenstein offensive production, like with Shea off the floor. Again, another thing that doesn't matter as much.
Well, sorry, I was gonna say even with Shea on it, but I think that's why we might view it differently from the Grizzlies. Is who is like that would be my tactical question to kind of combine the two. Is who is guarded? Like, okay, Vince Williams Jr., Scottie Pippen Jr. on Shea. Okay, have fun with his 50 burgers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no answer to like how do you guard Shea. Can Jalen Williams run the offense? That's going to be my question until we see it consistently. And like it's a little bit of a misnomer because we've seen the numbers and you've pointed them out too. Like if Chet or Hartenstein is out there with him, like it's fine, like it's not an issue. But let's see it in the playoffs just to validate it.
And I think what was a problem though is like Jalen Williams' offense was a struggle even with Shea on the court last year in the playoffs. So what does that look like? And the Thunder in general, when you look at the teammates of shit, like everyone who's non-Shea, they rank in the 5th percentile of half-court shot making, and that's not great. And so like, still concerned.
You also don't get to like question anything tactically that the Thunder are going to do defensively because it's just like what issue could possibly arise that they can't handle. So like we have to think of something on offense for them.
And I would be curious to see, and I think it becomes more, but I guess if you're going to play Jaren Jackson Jr. next to a big, you still want to go this route against Memphis. But like, okay, how does the dual big lineup hold up in the playoffs with Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein? Like, not like defensively, maybe even on the glass. I think it's more of I'd be more interested. I think it'll be fine against both teams, to be clear. But like Dallas, if they're going to play Davis and then it's Gafford or Lively and then PJ Washington's on the floor, like not Najee Marshall, they're pretty huge still, even without Luka there. So yeah, I think that would be, I'm like fascinated to see what that happens. I don't know just if it was tactically from Memphis' perspective, are you using against Shea without Jalen Wells there? Like who do you default to?
It's got to be Pippen, I think.
I think you're right.
And he's just not big enough.
Yeah, he's just not big enough. So Dallas, at least you have a bunch of different, you could try PJ Washington and Max Christie. You have options to throw at them. Another one, like kind of in this too, is I don't know if this is a narrative question, but like what does Anthony Davis look like if the Mavericks come out of this? If he's going to play the 4, he's going to just take more jumpers, and he's not a good jump shooter. I think can we move this to the bubble?
Right. Yeah. Can we play with no fans in Orlando?
Also hasn't been moving the same. So there's that. And then John Morant, I guess like he's fine after his ankle issue too. We'll know more after we watch that game tonight if they get through this. But which team, I guess Memphis's offense is better built at this point to stress test Oklahoma City's defense, right?
Yeah. That's the tough thing of it is like, that is clearly of both teams, the biggest strength on either side is just Memphis's offense. And it's like, All right, is it historically great? No. Okay. Well, then then the Thunder are not going to, you know what I mean? Like the best thing we got from either of these teams is just not going to measure up, I don't think, to OKC. I do think it's kind of getting into the narrative part of it of like the Thunder's defense like seems like it should have the capacity to make Ja Morant just like not exist.
Yeah.
And I think so the narrative for me is like in the face of all the shit that's happened with Memphis, in the face of all his like off court dumb stuff and on court dumb stuff, and like the what I think it's fair to call like just like the like decline's not the right word, like just the way that Morant's like status in the league over the last like year to 18 months and like
Yeah.
where he sits has just like he's just not where he was, like in terms of like public perception, in terms of like where he ranks, if we're ranking players in ability. Like could he like use this series as a way, I'm kind of rooting for it, to just be like, no, I'm still kind of that guy, like I can go get 40 on this defense maybe. Like I think that's highly unlikely, but from a narrative perspective, because the Thunder are just going to win. And if it maybe it won't even be Memphis potentially, I don't know, we're recording this before that game. That would be like the most interesting thing to me, if Morant just like give me Alex Caruso, give me Lou Dort, give me Case and Wallace, I don't care, like I'm going to get to the basket and make stuff happen. Like that would be the most interesting development, I think, for Memphis's side, because then that reorients like, okay, no, we can sort of go forward, I think,
Yeah.
with most of this same core and our main guy.
And if they decide they can't, by the way, it gets really because so many of their players are cheap that you're not making material changes, I would think, and getting better unless you're are you moving one of the bigger three, because just your salary structure when it comes to matching for guys is so tough, at least until next trade deadline, if you add some new money to the books. X factors, I think for Memphis, I'm just going to go with Scottie Pippen Jr. because he'll have like, can you get the ball out of Shea's hands maybe a little bit? And it becomes Vince Williams if they default to that. For Dallas, that one's tough. Like, who is the X? Is it just I'll go PJ Washington, because I think that he'll have like the biggest breadth of different types of defensive assignments, and that's someone you could lean into. Okay, is he making his threes? Is he kind of ducking in for cuts? Can you put the ball in his hands a little bit? You could go Najee Marshall, I think, too, if you wanted to, just what he does in transition. For the Thunder on the X factors, I just feel Jalen Williams feels too high profile. If you're gonna pick it, I don't know who is the X factor. If like, because I'm just looking at their opponents and then just none of them really intimidate me. I'll say I have no idea.
It could just be Chet. It could just be Chet. Like, is he like
so high profile though? That's the thing.
but everybody on the Thunder is good. The problem is if they're not too good to qualify as an X factor, you know exactly what you're getting from them, which means you're also not an X factor. Like, oh, is Lou Dort going to play good defense? Yeah, I think he's probably going to play good. Like maybe it's like, can Lou Dort make a bunch of threes if they take the ball out of Shea's hands or something like that? You know, maybe it's something that
yeah. I'll say but then it could be Case and Wallace if you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah. Can I just go with Nikola Topic? I'd like to see like how good of a teammate he's going to be on the side. This is just narratively, there'll be questions to ask about the Thunder, but they're not losing in the first round if they do lose. And so you can't even come up with that. That's why I'm just struggling so much with it. So I'll say Chet, because I think it's very clearly, I know we've had some talk about this in the past, and maybe some of it's the availability stuff. J-Dub is just the second best player on this team. And I actually think there's when you're looking offensively, there's a pretty clear gap there now. And so if J-Dub doesn't have it going at all in the playoffs, like then it kind of, all right, if you trust Isaiah Hartenstein more to like jumpstart the offense and set up others rather than giving it to Chet and exploring what he could do, that becomes like, it's not problematic, but like that would just be something to monitor. So yeah, I will go Chet, even though he feels, based off my other selections, he feels in every other series feels way too high profile.
I'll just say Case and Wallace, because he might go 1 for 4 from 3, or he might go 3 for 4, and that'll be the difference between the Thunder winning by 29 and 23. I think basically is, on a night-to-night basis.
It's series predictions. Are you going to go gentleman sweep for both of these again, or is
no? I think I'm just going Thunder sweeping either of them. I mean, like, you got to give it to them. If they're not going to sweep somebody, who is? So I just don't. I mean, Memphis, I think, has a better shot. I'll say that, but I don't know what that means.
That's interesting. I think, and maybe you're probably right. Memphis has a better shot because I know Jalen Wells in there, but they're technically healthier. Like, but the Ja Morant ankle thing, and he's just always injured. It seems like so. Anthony Davis, if he was healthy, the Dallas is just so big and they have a lot of defensive versatility. I could see it being them. I'm going to go sweep across the board here. I actually do think, though, that Dallas could still gum up some things for Oklahoma City. I think that they're a bigger, well, I'll frame it this way. They're a bigger threat to win a game, not the series.
Okay.
I mean,
just based on definitely Anthony Davis has wrecked a lot of teams built around like good paint finishing guards just because he's so imposing there and like mobile enough and with Lively there too. Maybe that, I don't know. I think Memphis just has more raw talent. But if Morant is hurt, then we're like, what are we talking about?
I am at the point with Dallas though that I would try throwing out a 5 big lineup and like let's just play Lively with Gafford, Davis, Washington, and Najee Marshall and see what happens.
Why not? Might as well.
That was fun and long. Are you have anything else to add, or would you like to take us out of here, Grant?
I think we've talked enough. What I will add is like, I think you could tell, but like some of these matchups, especially in the West, it feels like they're going to be so good. I'll be really disappointed if we don't have just some incredible playoff series. So
let us know your predictions in the comments or in our Discord as well, which I will be active with. I'm like, I feel like now I know how athletes feel when people are like speculating on where they've been, where there's been speculations of where I've been in Discord. And so like, I'm reading that. It makes me feel uneasy. I'll try to get back in there shortly, but yeah, I'm hopeful for the playoffs. Let us know your predictions. Really intrigued by them. 2 quick news notes though, Grant. Rob Pelinka got an extension and a promotion. He's now the team president of the Los Angeles Lakers. I guess like he really hit on that Dalton Connect pick. So that makes some sense.
That's probably what it was.
Greg Popovich had like some procedure too. Shams posted he had a medical incident at a restaurant on Tuesday night and is now home, stable, and doing fine. He also had that mild stroke in November. So here's hoping the best for Greg Popovich. That's been such a really just shitty situation over there in San Antonio.
Yeah. I would echo all that. I think that is going to do it. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know what your picks are there. Make sure you're telling your friends about the podcast. It's like the playoffs are a fun time for us because we really get to dig into games, and that's not something we always get to do. It's something we very much like to do. I hope that comes through.
Well, I mean, we're
going to watch games. So are you excited to watch games for the first time this year?
I don't watch games until the second round. So, I mean, like Grant, like there are sometimes like the 4 games in one day, that's a lot. Like, how am I supposed to watch any of them?
How about this? I'll watch the first quarter of all of them and just tell you what I think is going to happen, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
Without ever knowing the final score. Yeah.
That's probably enough. I don't want to spend. That's like watching a whole game. If there's 4 in a day, I watch 4 first quarters.
Aren't there highlights posted on like Blue Sky and Twitter? I could just like that's how I consume my basketball.
That feels like a lot too, really, to be honest.
Yeah, some of those things are longer than 60 seconds. It's great.
I just don't have it. Who's got the time? Shouts, Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.